It is recording now, Pam.
Okay, and I have a feeling that we're going to have some issues tonight because I see 57 people on this call. So just know that if you're on the Zoom call, if you could possibly hang up and dial in, that would be the best. Only because we can only support so much before everyone starts getting booted out. So it's not that we don't want you here. We want you here absolutely 100%. But if you could call in to save some bandwidth, that would be very helpful. All right, it is the May 18th, Monday, May 18th, 2020 school board meeting, 6 p.m. Actually at 6:06, and I will call this meeting to order. With everything we do online, we'll do a roll call. Janie Fair.
Present. Here.
Mike Christensen.
Here.
Jim Bryant.
Here.
Arlen Derricks.
Present.
Heidi Jones.
Present.
Holly Tower.
Present.
Thank you. We were trying to give you a little more time, Holly. Thanks for being here. And Cher is here. Thank you all. All right. So we will go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I'll go ahead and share our mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens. Okay, the agenda for the evening is in the board book. Does anybody have any changes that they need to make to the agenda?
Pam, there are no recommended changes.
Motion to approve the agenda, Pam.
Thank you. Janie made the motion. Second?
Heidi Jones, second.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? All right, then a roll call vote. Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Derrick?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Oh, I had my volume on.
And chair votes aye. So the agenda is as presented. The first item on our agenda then for the evening is our educational plan, which is always in the front of every agenda packet. Helps us to remember what our goals are, what our strategic plan is, and our vision for the district moving forward. The next item up on our agenda is recognitions and upcoming events. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm not sure. We may meet one more time before the virtual graduation on, help me with the date, June 3rd, I think, Friday. There's a lot of people from graduates of Red Wing helping putting this together with Mr. Nemenich and Mr. Hartman's support and guidance. So I'm sure there'll be more down the road on this, but if people are listening to this, please participate or at least take in the time to watch the virtual graduation from our seniors who've had an extremely unusual and unique second semester of their senior year.
That is very true.
I would just like to recognize all of our community members that have been on national news and local news and just really good community spirit here in Red Wing. And I just wanted to extend thanks to all those people. And I'm not going to go name by name because I'll probably forget someone. But thank you to everyone doing wonderful, kind things for our graduates.
And I will just say that I was at did the virtual graduation last Thursday, and it was a really well done event, well put together by Mr. Chose and Mr. Nemenich, Principal Nemenich. To me, it was almost better than the standard graduation because the families were showing up. There was a lot of staff there helping out to get things done. George and Jay would talk to and as well as the other teachers that were there helping out, talking to the families, talking to the students, reminding them if they had to get work in, congratulating them on getting work in and getting done. And it was a really great experience, I thought, and I was very impressed with how it went. And without any reservations, everybody who came in there looked pleased to be there and was having a good time and enjoying themselves. Even the shy students shrugging off and trying to be just casual about it. You could see that there was a feeling of achievement, and I think having the individuals there with them personally congratulating them was a really strong reinforcement of the efforts that they've made throughout their school careers, and the desire to get through successfully was well communicated. So I really thank everybody who worked on that committee to organize that and chose that method to do it. There may be other methods that work as well, but that was the one I was at, and it was a really outstanding experience for me. And thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. High school staff.
If I could just add,
Yes, please.
I was just amazed with the positive attitude of everybody that was at this graduation. It was, at least when I was there, no negativity about what was lost. It was just a sense of gratefulness and joy that we were doing this. And I say we as a board member were there, but once again, the people that organize us, family members are just thrilled with the opportunity to have at least what we have now. And it actually inspired me a great deal to look at things in a positive way because everybody was so positive there that night when I was there. So thank you, everybody.
Yep.
I would reiterate what both you and Mike said. I felt the same exact way, and I was telling my family my cheeks hurt at the end of the night from smiling for 4 hours straight. It was great to be a part of that event, and I agree that it was really great to see families, to be able to talk with each individual family as they came in addition to each student, and so it felt more intimate to me. Of course, we'll miss the big graduation, but yeah, again, like you said, Arlen and Mike, thank you to the staff at the high school for putting this together and for the production company. I really can't wait to see the outcome of all of that hard work. So thank you. Any other recognitions or upcoming events? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public comment. As always, we appreciate everybody's public comment, and even though we aren't meeting physically today, you can send your public comment statements to me at or pjroe@rwps.org at least 2 hours prior to any school board meeting, and I will make sure to read that on your behalf. So definitely take the time if you have some public comment to make sure you get those into me. Today, I have no public comment to share. And so we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is grading during distant learning.
I'd like to introduce Jess Whitcomb to give the presentation. She worked with several principals on developing our response for grading a spring semester, and so she'll give a summary. For those who have access to our website, if you look at the school board meeting agenda, you can see it listed as an extra, and it's just called the distance learning plan. So if you click on that, you can see more details about how we're grading, but Jess will summarize that verbally.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Hi.
evening.
So as I looked through your board packet, it looks like you have a lot to do tonight. So I'll try to keep this one brief. I will give a brief update on our district-wide grading decision. That was made by our administration with feedback from staff, parents, and students. We had to consider equity and then also living the Red Wing Public Schools mission to educate and inspire all students, just as we do. As you have seen in the updated distance learning plan, it's on page 5 and 6 of that updated plan. That was the one that we sent to staff, families, and yourselves about a week ago. The district admin team came to a decision that was best for all students in Red Wing Public Schools. So by default, all students will receive a credit or no credit. Report cards will be mailed home along with a letter from our administration describing the changes. At the elementary school buildings, teachers will be having mini conferences with families within the next few weeks. And at the high school, students may request a letter grade for any class they wish by Friday, May 29th. Teachers will also utilize the comment section on the report cards to provide more information to families on student strengths and the opportunities for growth come fall. Tower View's grading practices did not change. So that was a brief overview. You guys also have the updated distance learning plan in front of you. I'm also open to answer any questions that you may have about our grading policy.
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
Sorry, I think Pam might be muted, but I do have a comment if I can, Jess. This is not, I don't want to come off as criticism, but I did kind of share my frustrations with some of the admin. I just wanted to say it publicly because I know I've gotten some comments as school board members. So this is just like for the future. And I know you know that you can take that from me, but I realized that the decisions had to be made really quickly. And I am frustrated that school board members weren't really involved with that at all. So I would like that in the future if we could. And that we just continue to have choice for letter grades at the middle school possibly. You know, if we have to do this all over again, I think we just need to be challenging or rewarding all the students. So just my comments, like I said, I had shared them privately with admin and I want to make sure they are publicly stated too, so.
Yep. Thank you for sharing those with us. I think that there are two sides to the whole discussion always, and just know that all sides were taken into account when making the decision in the end.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'll also add, Janie, that you know, the distance learning plan for this spring, you know, will likely be different than any distance learning plan in the fall, because of course we'll have more time to prepare and get, you know, work with the school board and those kinds of things. So, you know, there will be upcoming changes if we need to do distance learning in the fall or winter of next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, may I comment?
Heidi
This is
has
Heidi.
Yep.
Jess, I appreciate when you said all students. Can you characterize some of the challenges that many of our students are having? How many kids are, you know, still struggling with technology access? Are we able to characterize some of that challenge for our district?
Sure. So we have been following up. Kevin Johnson, along with the technology team, and Meg Lahammer, has been really keeping track of where we're at with technology needs, and being really creative about how to meet those needs, and showing families where resources might be that might not be needed to be provided by the school district, but through their carrier and different things, Kevin has been helping families do that and delivering hotspots. We've also been keeping track of with the guidance from the state saying to keep track of your homeless population. We also have kept track of our homeless population. Jane Wasink has been really instrumental in making sure that we stay on top of that. We are steady with that population right now, that kids have access where they are at. We are also looking at the needs of the kids that are not logging in. They might have access but are not engaging. That is a constant battle that all cities and states across the country are dealing with right now. There's a lot of different supports that are going in place, with Karsten checking in with the Big Nine and making sure that we're all kind of utilizing the same strategies to try to get to those kids. That's one of the biggest things that we'll have to consider in moving to fall and return to school planning, that we engage the community more to say, like, how do we utilize all of our resources as a community to make sure we're doing wraparound services.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, because I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. And I know I've gotten feedback about the learning experience isn't as positive. Other students are handling it well, others are not. Families are struggling for different reasons. And so that was kind of led my concern about the grading adjustment. So thank you.
Yes.
I think we're having some more technical difficulties. I've seen, Mike, are you back on the call? How about you, Arlen? Are you here?
Well, if you can hear me, I'm here.
Okay, I can hear you. How about you, Mike? Are you here? All right, we're going to pause for just a moment and let him get an opportunity to try and get back in. Again, we've got 65 people on this call, and we can't get all board members on here because our bandwidth can only handle so many calls. So if you are on the Zoom call, if you could possibly look up the phone number and call in that way so that we can have more bandwidth for so our board members can be here, that would be really helpful. Mike, are you here yet?
I'm trying.
Oh, is that your voice?
Yes.
Okay,
No, I'm
good.
but I'm getting frozen out regularly.
Okay. Again, for those 66 people who are on here, if you could possibly hang up and just phone call in, we definitely want you to be here, but it's making the rest of this meeting pretty difficult. Jess, phone number. Oh yeah, thank
that
you.
would be
Here's the
helpful.
phone number. It's
And there's the pin.
I'm
yeah,
frozen.
I will give you the phone number to jot down. If you can grab a pen and paper, that would be great. 765-325-9448. I will give you that phone number one more time. 765-325-9448. That's the phone number to call, and you will be instructed to enter a PIN number. That PIN number is 896086616. We'd really appreciate it if you could give us a call that way. That would be really helpful. Is there any more questions or comments for Jess on distant learning grading? I unfortunately did not see a public comment that Mr. Weiss had sent about 2 hours ago. And so I'm going to go ahead and go back on our agenda item number 2.3 to public comment. And I will read this on his behalf. It's Comment by Nathan Weiss, address 1902 West 5th Street in Red Wing, 55066. To the members of the school board, this is Nathan Weiss speaking on my behalf in addressing my non-renewal. First, I want to thank the board for reading my letter and looking into the document I sent. I am also aware that many community members have sent in support for me, and I thank you for listening to their statements. It is my understanding the reason for my non-renewal has been a lack of growth in certain areas. Although I can acknowledge these are areas I look to grow in, as many teachers look to improve on areas for their benefit of their students, I want to make it clear that in many instances, the challenges I face was growing more or less on my own. I was given very little guidance and was left after many observations to seek out help on my own, research various techniques, and carry out some plans to improve with no feedback. I think it was essential to have coachable moments for me, and none such were given. The feedback I was given during my observations was mere areas I needed to grow in, with very few examples given. I took these suggestions and examples and carried out ways to incorporate them in my classroom. Some suggestions were followed and improved on. Others were given a chance but did not seem to fit the mold of my class schedule or makeup. To sum up my feedback, I was given suggestions but given very little direction on how to work on suggestions, nor check-in moments to reflect on them. No real coachable moments took place, an area I believe would be beneficial to all staff, especially new teachers. During my time at Red Wing, I have only received observations and no other times where administration have reached out or followed through. I believe if they saw areas of struggle, that follow-up and a plan of action would have been an integral part of the process, and it was not present. One item that has been mentioned is the guidance of a mentor. My assigned mentor was a math PLC partner. We have built a great relationship in how we plan, mirroring each other in our own classrooms. We have gone above and beyond expectations to implement flex grouping to help students at all levels of need. We work very well together in various areas and have a great working relationship. The one downfall of our mentor-new teacher relationship has been that no plan of action from the district has been incorporated with my mentor and I. My first day at Red Wing 4 years ago was the only designated time laid out for mentors and new teachers. Outside of this day, no formative approach between mentor and new teacher has been implemented. It was my mentor and I's understanding that my mentor was there to be someone to reach out to in time of need. No steps or actions were given to my mentor to help me. My mentor has felt that very little time or direction was given to enhance the mentor label. My mentor has been instrumental in helping with everyday teaching and has given me many skills as an educator. We both have felt a time for my mentor to observe and give feedback was an essential part of my growth process. This has been missed as part of Red Wing's new teacher plan. Whatever decision is made, I hope the board looks for an improvement plan on the process for new teachers and observations. New teacher mentorship observation programs becomes a supportive growth tool that is consistent for all new teachers across the district. I believe it is critical for teacher growth that new teacher observations be done by the same consistent administrator. Also, I believe that observations and reviews must take into consideration input from the new teacher's mentor, PLC members, and para support staff to ensure that a full picture of the teacher's skills and areas for improvement are seen. Post-observation meetings should not be one-on-one and should be framed with the intent of professional discussion and growth shared between administrator, teacher, and mentor/colleague. I hope an improvement plan for this process is constructed so future teachers can improve in a more productive manner using the process. Thank you again for taking the time and having conversations about my situation. And that
Pam,
ends.
if I could respond just real quickly. This item is on later on the agenda, so I'll just suffice it to say now is that there is a motion that will be considered later, and so some of these topics may be discussed later in the meeting.
Thank you. And thank you for submitting that public comment. And again, we welcome public comment and thank you for following the procedures and getting that in. I'm sorry I didn't see that
in a timely manner. All right, school board reports. How about finance committee? Can we start with finance committee on any updates from you?
I think we'll be talking about them tonight, and we have a meeting coming up. Otherwise, there's nothing really new other than the need to watch our spending. But I missed the talk on the grading. Is Jess still on, right? But she's muted.
I'm here. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Good.
What we're doing, was that Department of Education suggestions or guidance to not be concerned about letter grades and actually just making sure that kids either did or didn't get their work complete?
So it was, they didn't give a ton of guidance on specifics. They gave a couple of overarching principles to think about. They wanted us to think about equity. They wanted us to think about access to technology. They wanted us to consider what were kids doing learning-wise during third quarter, and how did that change maybe to fourth quarter. And then they wanted us to consider about consistency. What does that look like? Consistency of expectations to all kids.
Right. All right. That's good. The impact of grades will not be a great impact either way, right? If it's just a pass, fail, or a credit, no credit, it's not going to impact their grade point averages. It just might give the kids an indication of how well they did. And most of the kids probably know how well they did.
Right. We still have Google Classroom up and going for kids, and also kids can see where their percentage is, even if they come out with a pass fail.
Okay.
So, and then they can also, in case you didn't hear that, they can request a grade at the high school and any class as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of no grades whatsoever, so that flies high with me. But I think it works really well. The equity is an issue, and we're going to have a whole lot more to do next year to make sure that our kids are where the state wants them to be, at least, if it's not where we want them to be. So thanks. I appreciate your work, and thanks for coming back to comment.
Yep.
That's all.
Anything else on finance, Mike? No? All right, how about on operations? Is there any update from the operations committee?
We met before the last board meeting, so our next meeting is the first meeting in June. First Monday in June, excuse me.
Thank you. Any updates from personnel? Jamie?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. So again, we'll be meeting the first week in June also, but I just wanted to highlight that, as you can see, we're in the midst of busy negotiation times. We're meeting 1 to 2 times a week, many of us, and there's likely some full board discussions we're going to need to have that relates to the new budget actuals with COVID and such. So I think we're going to need some guidance and kind of some of the negotiations, so maybe be looking toward that. And then I did want to highlight, as we did talk about the superintendent's evaluation, that his contract will be up at the end of next June, and we are able to start negotiations in July. So I've alerted Chair Rowe that we're going to have to kind of make a plan on how we're going to do that in the summer, and just kind of a timeline plan for that of what we're going to do. So thanks. Oh,
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm sorry, if I could add too, just while I have the floor, if that's okay. Carson, if you could, on the district advisory committee, I just had, we are a committee that doesn't meet very frequently. So I was hoping that Dr. Borgen could possibly reach out to that committee, or I don't mind sending her an email too, just before she's done, to kind of, talk about next steps or who's going to be taking that over, and give them some information about just the future, because we worked hard on getting that going and I don't want it to go to the wayside again. So thank you. Not done.
Yeah, and Janie, perhaps you and I can chat with Dr. Borgen sometime in the next week or two and figure out next steps.
Thank you.
Any updates from Legislative and Policy Committee?
Yes, Heidi Jones speaking. We met just prior to this board meeting. We are going through the 100, the 200, and 300 policy review for this year. The 200 series deals specifically with the school board, and we feel there's probably some future discussion that should perhaps be part of prioritizing pieces in board self-evaluation and our discussion later this evening. As far as how do we manage to respectfully have everybody speak at meetings, how we handle changes in the agenda, and how we manage electronic communications. So just a little bit there, and we don't have a lot else to talk about at this point. If it's okay, I'd like to continue speaking on, have quite a bit of information for you from MSBA. And this is the end of the legislative session today too. So first of all, the legislature was focused on tax relief for property tax changes and payments and such, elections, and then education pieces from COVID, and that was relevant directly to school board stuff. Under education, there was an omnibus bill that was passed in the House, but since there was no action in the Senate, the bill is dead. So the omnibus education policy bill for this session is dead. There were a lot of pieces they needed to address, so I don't know what happens next. Unresolved in the rest of the session was the bonding bill. A supermajority was required and was not achieved. They did not reach consensus on the designation of $1.8 billion in federal aid, and that includes education money, and then state employee contracts. So there is some talk of a special session on June 12th. The governor would have to call that. It's up to his discretion to go forward with that. As I stated before, I think last week, the governor's priorities for education money were supporting access to technology. We heard that a little bit from Jess Whitcomb tonight about tech divide in our own community. Summer school, there's a discussion about if your child didn't do well with distance learning, where's their opportunity to make that up for credit recovery? And we don't know what that looks like right now because we haven't gotten that guidance. And then also to support childcare. I don't think it's any news, but I will at the MSBA board meeting on Friday morning, they reaffirmed that the deficit, we've had a huge swing in the state's financial outlook. We went from a $1.5 billion deficit to a 2.5 billion, or a surplus to now a $2.5 billion deficit. They are reaffirmed again that you should not expect any increases in the general education formula for the next 2 years, starting with next year's session, and that also payment shifts or delays will be likely. That will force some districts into short-term borrowing, which comes at the cost of interest rates. We may or may not need to exercise that, but if we're in that paradigm, that's not a good place to be. MSBA's message for this next session is you better be advocating for no cuts. That's about as positive as we could be at this point. The November forecast for the state's outlook will probably be worse. And right now, our best bet for funding would be the federal government. There is some issues with the Department of Education, misunderstanding how different funds are supposed to be dispersed. So we need to help them understand that. A letter has been sent on the school district's behalf across Minnesota from MSBA to all our Congress people in this state and to Secretary DeVos to straighten that out. If you look back at your action alert on May 13th, you'll find a lot of pieces about the CARES Act. There's a lot of work ahead to do. We want to be smart about where we think potential funding is going to support the issues we're facing. And like I said, that would be the CARES Act federally. The HEROES Act is in the US House. Right now, the CARES Act is probably not providing near enough money for the crisis that public education is experiencing. So I'm sorry that there is no more better news, but I think we need to face reality. And I know that will come into play in our discussions going forward with the HR plan and the budget reductions. I believe tomorrow MSBA is offering a webinar about what happened with the legislative session. I do not know what time that is, and I did not see the link sent out yet. I may have just missed it. But that's kind of a really short summary of my update. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. It's really good to have all that information from MSBA and the legislative forecast coming out. So thank you. Any other school board reports? Okay, seeing none, then I will turn it over to Superintendent Anderson for his administrative report.
Thank you, Pam. I'm just going to mention a couple of things that are listed in the administrative report section. First of all, there was, during the last meeting, there was a mention of potential charter school in our community. And I just wanted to let everyone know that there was a brief discussion between some people planning the program and the school district in terms of possibly partnering on some sort of venture. There were some questions that were posed to me as far as what that could look like in terms of decision-making authority and those kinds of things. I did answer those questions within a few days after receiving them and provided that to their board members, but they opted to pursue a charter school in the next year or two. So again, I just wanted to let you know that there had been discussions. We were interested in exploring that partnership, but it just didn't make sense with the model that they were pursuing. The other topic on the report section has to do with COVID-19, just kind of an open-ended question. I would like to let you know that there is a group of individuals who are working on developing some potential options for consideration by the school board for this fall and beyond in terms of what learning could look like due to COVID-19. We all understand that it may not be our call. The governor or the state might determine what our option is. But if we have options, then we want to be prepared for coming up with the best plan for our kids. And so there's a small group that's working on that. We will work in a larger group right after the school year is over. So we've dedicated 4 or 5 days, I think June 4th through the second week of June after graduation. We're really going to be focused on that particular topic. Clearly, we have more time to plan and prep for this, and so the school board and public will be involved in significant ways. Do you have any questions about that planning or anything else with COVID-19?
Holly has a question for you.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, Carson. Thank you. Who initiated that meeting between you and the Red Cottage Monastery?
It was the current director of a local school.
And who all met at that meeting?
This was a few months ago. It was pre-COVID. I believe Jeff Whitcomb, the director of the program, and I met.
Are you at liberty to say who the director's name is?
You know, I'm not sure how public, that discussion is or could be. So I'd probably want to chat with her first just to make sure that you're okay with me sharing the name. My guess is that she'd be perfectly fine, but I'd like to double check with her if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that. How many times did you meet?
You know, I don't know offhand. It was at least once or twice, and then we had some email communication.
Okay, and what did you mean when you said partnering on the future? What does that mean?
You know, there was a question as far as whether or not the school district would be working with another entity on developing a Montessori school, either at the elementary level or perhaps the K-12 within our local school district.
I'm curious to know why this is the first time we're hearing of this.
Well, for one thing, I didn't know the level of their interest in such a potential partnership. And so really we're just exploring options. Certainly if they were interested in moving forward, there would have been a lot of discussions, at least until COVID-19 surfaced.
So we talk about enrollment and we talk about trying to bring kids to the district instead of losing kids. So I would have thought this would have been a very important topic to bring up to the board. So I'm glad we're hearing about it now. Thank you.
Janie, you had a comment?
Yes, Carson, could you just kind of go a little further in some of that COVID? I've gotten some questions in public about, why we're not making cuts like some similar businesses or nonprofits. And so that as far as salaries and then number two would be just planning for fall. I know you made some comments about, that obviously it's way above us as far as, the state of Minnesota having to make some recommendations, but I'm glad to hear that we'll be discussing it, but, I know that people just want to, I think, know more about that discussion happening in June and stuff. So maybe you can elaborate more on those two things. And you're muted.
Thank you, Janie. I am working between three different devices, so that may happen more than once. First, I'll answer the question about why we haven't made significant cuts now, right in the middle of COVID-19. The reason is that when the governor's orders came out, there was a very clear direction that because we were receiving state money as the legislature had approved previously, that we should not, start cutting our employees and therefore build up a fund balance. We're still getting the same revenue stream at least through June 30th in the general fund. So that's why we haven't had significant cuts during this period of time. Now, there have been some natural reductions. For example, if someone has resigned, then we just aren't questioning a position. We had some different circumstances with our spring coaches. And so you see later in the agenda that we'll be discussing how much those spring coaches should be paid. And our recommendation is not to pay the full amount. But that's very different because the spring sports season had just started. There can also be some exceptions with fee-based programs, such as community education programs. But, we're going to be discussing that probably at the June 1st meeting, maybe the June 15th meeting as far as what we do there. So that's why we haven't made significant reductions now, instantly. I think the second question you asked, Janie, had to do with employee wages or salaries and why we haven't, furloughed people or cut back on people's salaries. Just one reminder is that if we have a ratified contract by an employee group and the school district, we are bound to that contract. Typically, those contracts cannot be opened up during the term of the contract. As far as increasing salary or decreasing salary. However, at the end of those contractual terms, then that's everything's a different story. Then we'll be convening as a school board to decide what those parameters should look like. And then we'll be negotiating based on those updated parameters. So those are the primary reasons why we haven't, seen changes in, the salaries for example, our education assistants or teachers or principals, those organized bargaining groups. Let's see, maybe just, actually, if there's any questions about those two topics, then I'll give a little more detail about fall planning.
I was next in line, I think, to comment, and I just wanted to share that I've had somebody in the community ask me about what is the impact on music and the arts as far as distance learning. There was some concern that type of learning would suffer because it was hard to understand how that translated into a distance learning setting. So I just wanted to share that. I guess I was interested too about what that looks like for us. And that was all I wanted to comment on.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to say that, distance learning will never, ever match face-to-face interaction. So regardless of the subject area, it is different. It looks different. It feels different because it is different. And so, we provide a much better product when we're meeting in person, especially compared to, online schools and other groups that are, trying to become involved in that. So I think in general, that's true. In particular, our hands-on experiences like the arts, music, shop classes, those kinds of things definitely impacted in a much stronger way because, kids just don't, have that kind of equipment or supplies at home. And it's also beneficial to be working alongside a teacher right in the classroom to learn those things. So undoubtedly that'll be impacted, but I'll tell you what, a lot of our teachers are very clever and are coming up with real innovative ways of teaching those subjects. It looks different, but they're making the most of it. I will also say that this is we had I think 8 days to plan for our distance learning, and we didn't have kids with computers in their homes. We've not done e-learning previously, and so I think we've done a really good job as far as addressing immediate needs over the last couple of months of school. But I do believe that if we have to do distance learning in the fall, that it will look different because we have more time, we have more examples to learn from, and we'll be able to improve what we're doing in distance learning. As far as timeline for the decision making, in the ideal world, we would know in June or early July what we want to do. But right now, we don't even know if we have an option or what those options might be. It could be distance learning that's continued in the fall, or maybe it starts if there's a second, wave of cases. Maybe it's hybrid learning where kids are in the building every other day or every third day, something like that. And so then teachers would need to provide the in-person experience and the distance learning experience. Or we could have kids, right back in the buildings in late August. We hope that's what happens because it's safe, for our kids and staff members to be here. So right now we're moving ahead with kind of frameworks for each one of those options, but the detailed planning may not happen until sometime in June June or July.
Thank you. Before you go into the fall, I do have a question, Karsten, on kind of summer planning. I know that there are a number, the Baseball Association and the Softball Association is looking at an extremely abbreviated summer program with maybe just a handful of games played in June, maybe late June and July. And so I'm just wondering what, those fields are things that the association utilizes. Obviously, our fields, our softball field. And so is there any plan for opening up some of our facilities or, ballparks for summer programming?
Yeah, certainly like the youth sports are primarily driven by non-school groups. And so the issue is, do we let them use our fields in the Prairie Island Ice Arena? Does the city let them use their fields, for similar activities? And I don't have an answer yet right now, but that is one thing that the operations committee and possibly the community education and recreation board will be discussing over the next few weeks. So I don't have an answer right now, but I will say that by far my most important concern is we want to make sure that our kids and adults are safe. And, we don't want to take any chances just because we love to play soccer, or baseball or another sport. We have to make sure that the situation is safe. And it's going to eventually come to the school board for a final decision as far as what spaces will be available to the public.
Well, and I do know those associations are lobbying right now, Governor Walz. And so there is a big push right now for an abbreviated program for softball and baseball youth. And I know those are associations, but they do use our fields. So those questions are probably going to need to be answered sooner rather than later. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there so that we can start thinking about that and what our feelings are regarding the use of our facilities there. So that's it. Jim, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Mine's probably going to tie into the later in the agenda. I just think it's important to make a comment. I kind of support there and back up Board Member Tower on the questioning how your conversations went on for several months before, even before COVID-19, which is over 2 months old. And I know we've discussed the local charter school possibly in the Red Wing area in our finance committee. I was also kind of taken back, but you've had actually meetings, and then a little bit surprised that you didn't know how many you had. So I think we have to consider looking at that as we're looking at our cuts down the road, if they're going to do any, based upon the e-learning distance and the charter school taking other youth from our area that would qualify for coming to Red Wing School District. Our numbers have went down every year for some time, and so I just I'm a little bit taken back by the fact that you've been having these meetings, and this is the first we knew about them. Thank you.
Yeah, the meetings occurred. The meetings occurred, several months ago, and I received an email one day, and I had a very short time frame to respond to that email. I certainly did not say no, because I wanted, the school board and the school district to seriously consider, the possibility, if it made sense for everyone. And, but it's a very short turnaround time. And so that really limited the ability to get significant school board feedback about that particular issue. Then COVID happened, and quite frankly, I hadn't heard anything for quite some time, and then I heard through the grapevine that they had decided to pursue a certification of the charter school. So that news came out more recently, and it was since COVID happened. Yeah, and as far as the number of meetings, I mean, if it was, 2, 3, 4 months ago, I'm not going to say for sure that I had so many meetings because, I just don't recall offhand how many there were. I think there were 1 or 2, but I might be mistaken.
Mike, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I do. Whatever. I'm on my phone and my computer. Yeah, Karsten is our liaison to the community. So he goes out and talks to a lot of people in the community, and having an active school in the community would not preclude him from visiting that school, checking in, seeing how things are going, and offering support, moral support or whatever for the people in that school and the families. I don't think it's beyond his capacity to speak about options if that school is expressing interest in perhaps becoming a charter school or becoming a part of our district, aligning its curriculum somehow to what we offer. It's not a subversion of our district to be doing that, which is kind of what you guys are making it sound like. It's simply communication with another school in our area, and keeping in contact with the people who are involved in that, which is never a bad thing. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and I'll add that I hear about different programs and even other possible schools. I've heard different rumors and had different discussions, for years. Most, do not follow through, with their discussions. They're kind of brainstorming and they're talking about possibilities. And so I don't think it would be the best for me to share every single conversation, that I have, with the full community. So anyway, when, after hearing that the online, that they were pursuing the certification, then, we added it to this board meeting just to share.
And Holly, you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I do have a comment or sort of a question. Mike, when you reference you guys in that kind of know-it-all mannerism, I'm concerned about that. So could you clarify a little bit more what you meant by us asking questions about being concerned about this?
I have no problem with you being concerned about it, but your presentation is introducing a subtext of subversion of our duties, like Karsten is going outside of his purview to be talking to other schools. So I'm just concerned about we have an oversight duty and not a direct duty. So we need to mind our manners and understand what our responsibilities are.
I thought that's what you meant, scolding. So it's inappropriate, Mike. It's very inappropriate.
It's also inappropriate for you to scold Karsten.
Excuse me?
I'll sign off there.
I won't. This has been happening for about 1.5 years, and I don't understand it. However, I think you've been able to get by with it for quite a few years, and I'm going to respectfully ask you to stop.
Stop communicating with other schools?
Whoops, I just realized I was on mute. I'm just wondering, unless there are other pressing questions about those 2 items, I still have another part of my administrative report that I'd like to share. It's listed as a separate document on the school board agenda website. But just as a reminder, it lists the 4 different strategic directions of our education plan, and then talks about what we've done this year with regard to those initiatives. And, I put it in the board packet. I'm certainly not claiming credit, for them. It takes a huge group of school people and non-school people to make this work. Certainly, some of our priorities changed after COVID-19 happened, but I tried to list as many things as I could in that particular document. So, you may not have questions now about it because I know the school board members have seen it a lot, over the last year. But if there are community members that want to peruse that, and then let me know if you have any questions or suggestions, I'm always available for that.
And Carson, this is Pam. I will say that I do appreciate you putting that into the agenda packet. It's a nice summary of the things that have been implemented based on the education plan that we always start our meeting out talking about. And so thank you for keeping that updated. I very much appreciate that. Okay. Any last things on the administrator report? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any changes that anybody has to the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to discuss the some of the language in the minutes from May 4th. This is Heidi Jones.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't know if this is appropriate time or not, if or some point, if it isn't, if Mr. Anderson can see, we had some very significant resignations by some people here that I was kind of surprised to see if there's some way to inform us as to where they're going or what they're going to be doing besides working for us. They're not retirees, they're resignations.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Jim, and I know, why most of them are leaving, but I really don't like to share that at a public meeting. I view that as personal business, and I think they'd be the better ones to kind of share it with you or with other board members or the public. But we do appreciate their service to the district, and there's a couple of folks, or there's some folks on there who have made actually all of them have made good contributions to our district, and so we hate to see them leave, but I'm sure they'll be successful in whatever they do next.
So Heidi, just so I'm clear, we'll pull number 1 from the consent agenda and discuss that and vote on that separately. Is that what we'd like to see happening?
Yes.
Okay.
So if there's no other pieces that board members want to pull from the consent agenda, I will make the motion that we approve the consent agenda minus the board minutes from May 4th.
Janie will second.
All right, made by Heidi, Janie seconded. Any other discussion? Okay. Then I'll take a roll call vote on that motion to accept the consent agenda minus number 1 of the board minutes. Mr. Christensen.
I accept.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Consent agenda passes with the pulling of the minutes of May 4th. All right.
Okay, so my comment on the minutes from May 4th is, if board members will note, we had aye, nay, and absent for our vote categories. And I've already talked about this with Lisa Stigurda because we kind of share responsibility about doing those correct minutes, and we have a checks and balances system. Absent didn't really reflect correctly some of the board motions made at the last meeting. For example, on page 3, under Human Resources Plan, the second motion there records some aye votes, some nay votes, and then an absent. Well, Mr. Dirks was actually present at the meeting. He was abstaining. So that's to set up, we are going to change this to aye, nay, absent potentially, and then abstain is really the reflection of what we wanted to record for that member's action on a particular motion. So I'm going to say that we're going to make that change. And I'm not sure how we process that, Karsten, if we make that change tonight or we come back with some corrected minutes next board meeting.
Yeah, we could do either way, but you could just make the motion to approve the May 4th meeting minutes with the change to abstentions as appropriate.
Okay, so moved.
I'll second. Mike second.
Moved by Heidi, seconded by Mike. Any other discussion on making those changes to the minutes?
Yeah, I have a question. Do we need to have it absent in there if it's noted that somebody is absent in the beginning attendance of the meeting? Or should it just be abstain?
Yeah, my gut feel is that it could just be aye, nay, and abstain, if anyone abstains, and then just not have absent on there because we'll know who was starting the meeting and when people entered the meeting and when people left. So
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I think it's a personal preference, so yeah, we can keep it that way. That's fine with me.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think that's correct. We're putting the word absent is not, I don't think, necessary. If a person abstains, that should be noted in the role in that motion that was presented at that time. Otherwise, aye or nay is appropriate for any and all motions unless otherwise. And abstain.
You know, normally I would agree, but as I'm sitting here thinking about how people are dropping in and out of the meeting for whatever reasons, and most of it, like if a board, so say if it's the example of a board member that's technologically dropped from the meeting, they're having trouble getting back in. Are we tracking those? I'm leaving, I'm back. And then of course we're doing roll call votes, but there might be a virtual glitch in these meetings where somebody has dropped out of the meeting unintentionally and now the vote is ready and they are still unable to get back in. Would that be an example that we would want to record absent for that vote and like an asterisk that, you know, did they permanently drop out of the meeting or are they trying to get back in, but we couldn't wait 5 minutes for them to get back in to take this vote? I know I've probably just thrown a fly in the ointment, but it just, as I'm sitting here thinking, you know, our struggles with technology, this might be an example of how you might want to record absent for that vote because, you know, they just weren't present on the roll call vote at that time. I don't know how other boards are handling that. I would welcome discussion or feedback, or leave it the way it is for now and we'll have a follow-up discussion with some you know, people who maybe have an answer for us.
Actually, Heidi, we've discussed that, the superintendent and Arlen and myself discussed that very item, and we will do our best to pause as long as we need to get somebody back in for a vote. So, but you're right, we should have a way to record that just in case, you know, we can't wait 20 minutes for somebody to get back in for a vote. So I think if we can agree to wait about 5 minutes if somebody's dropped for a particular vote, that would be my preference. And then we would have to probably mark them absent from the vote if we can't get them back in. Although, you know, they would be able to get back in with a phone call, even if you can't get back in on the Zoom call. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how the phone calls are going, but I think
it takes some time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it might take some time, which is why I say keep your phones handy because you can always just call me. And then
Yeah, and
I know that's not a formative way of holding a vote, but at least we would know that you're still there, and we could maybe move it to a later agenda item until somebody could get back in.
okay, however you want to handle. I was just in a large board meeting on Friday, and sometimes people were there and sometimes they weren't, and it's like, okay, we took the vote, we need to move on, you know?
Right.
So,
No, I hear you.
Just
I
food
hear
for
you.
thought, sure.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's really good thinking. All right, so the motion on the table right now is to make those changes to the minutes of May
From
4th.
absent to abstain, yes.
Correct. And you made that, and who seconded that?
Yes, Mike.
Mike. So any other discussion? All right, we'll do another roll call vote, and this time start with you, Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So we will make those changes to the minute. Thanks for pointing that out. We'll get that cleaned
All right,
up.
thank you.
All right, donations and grants.
We do have a donation from CCF Bank for $2,500 for food service meals. I do want to point out that we are receiving revenue for the meals that we do provide. However, we're also providing three meals a day for the kids of emergency workers, and we get reimbursed for 2. And then we also are making some donations of food because, you know, it just cannot be used, you know, on the school bus method for delivering meals. And so these donations are helping pay for those 2 items. So I just wanted to clarify that. And of course, we appreciate the donations from everyone, not only for food service, but for our other activities of the school district.
So I'm looking for a motion, to approve the attached resolution accepting donations and grants.
So moved, and thank you to CCF Bank.
Second, Jim.
Moved by Jeannie, seconded by Jim. Any other discussion?
Yes, this is Heidi jumping in again. We have the
I have
same
a question.
issue with this resolution. It has aye, nay, and absent. And I would recommend that we change the absent to abstain again in case a board member feels they have a conflict of interest and they want to just stay out of that vote.
We will make that change. Mike, did you have a comment?
Yes, is it CCF Bank or TCF?
CCF,
CCF.
they're local.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So that resolution is passed. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the superintendent evaluation summary. After our last board meeting 2 weeks ago, we went into a closed session to discuss a mid-year superintendent evaluation. It is not the full year evaluation. It's the mid-year check-in on the progress towards goals. The last full evaluation that we conducted for Superintendent Anderson, I believe, was November of 2019. And at that time, 4 main goals were identified that we would like that the district was identifying based on our educational plan. Those goals were number one, to provide excellent educational opportunities to enhance student learning and engagement with proven instructional strategies and technology integration. Number two, focus instruction and professional growth on improving student learning and engagement. Number three, create a responsive, safe, open, and respectful environment across all schools and programs. And number four, to provide high quality and efficient services through the strategic investment and allocation of resources. So those were the four main areas that we were focused on this time for the mid-year evaluation. And we had our closed session to talk about how we feel Superintendent Anderson is doing, and we all feel that he's progressing and or meeting expectations for each of those four areas indicated. We spent some time talking about all of the things that we've been able to accomplish at the leadership of our superintendent, and some directives that we'd like to see him continue for the next half of the year. We will be performing a full evaluation of our superintendent in November, which is just in time as we start discussing the superintendent negotiating for the next contract. So that's kind of how we've worked our timing. Any comments?
Madam Chair, question?
Yes.
What evaluation did we do shortly after, a few months after the first of the year of 2019? I remember we had a pretty full evaluation before his contract was brought before us. Well, I thought that was where we did the annual one.
I may have had that date wrong. I can look it up exactly. Arlen, do you remember the exact date?
You know, I think I could add a little perspective there, Jim. I know previously we have done the superintendent evaluation one time per year. And then a couple of years ago, and by the way, those would be done in the spring. And so I think the last full evaluation was in the spring of 2019, probably in May.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sometime.
I have it actually right here in front of me. Yep, it's May 12th at 2019.
Yeah, and then over the last couple of years, we received a copy of kind of best practices with the superintendent evaluation that the Minnesota School Board Association put out. And so, you know, we've had several discussions since then to see how we could kind of comply with those suggestions by MSBA. We don't have to, but I think that's why there's, you know, some confusion as far as mid-year or final year and when those evaluations take place. So I think that's the context you're looking for.
And that could be, if I may just, I'll speak a couple of more issues or something like that, Madam Chair, and then others can obviously have the floor. This is a synopsis of what put together by who?
Who wrote the summary?
Yes.
That was me.
Okay, thank you. I noticed in the evaluation that we did midterm, it was very tight area, not a full type evaluation, but some things were brought up in that evaluation, such as the I'm going to use this word, the ongoing mess at Burnside School until finally, after going way too long, was finally action was taken. And I know a couple of people commented on something like that, but I see nothing in here on that. Was that something that you intended to put in here or not?
It is my understanding that this summary needs to be pretty vague. I didn't go into specific details because of personnel issues. And that was a directive by several people that I consulted with.
Thank you.
Heidi, did you have a question?
Yeah, so this was a formative one, and so we are changing the process, and that's that mid-year piece. And so we already had goals in place, which I think were really clear. It was the education plan implementation, and Carson provided a lot of documentation or evidence about, you know, what that is going on. So I hadn't expected to see like there's new directives here, and there's 9 of them. So I think we need to have a board discussion, and again, maybe this lends itself to a workshop scenario, or it's contained within the self-evaluation piece about, you know, just what it is we're supposed to do in this formative evaluation, because I had assumed goals were set, we're just measuring progress, and we may want to think the scale, because I think some members thought, well, we're in progress, we're not finished yet, so that's a yellow versus on the red, yellow, green scale. And I gave green because it's like, yep, this is ongoing. So I think there was some interpretation there that we probably need to improve or talk about. So I just, I applaud us for trying to follow best practice, trying to keep an eye on things. And I think that's great. But as with anything kind of new to folks, I think we need to probably look back at it and discuss it again. So I would recommend that maybe this is something that needs to put on that list of the board needs to discuss, and where do we do that? So I'm pleased with the progress we've made. When we look back at that long list of what's going on, I am just blown away by how active this district is in continuous improvement. Certainly we have had our challenges. I'm not going to skim over that. But I continue to have confidence that we're moving in the right direction. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes, please, Arlen.
Yeah, this is a little bit confusing going through this evaluation. Part of it falls back on me not getting us going 6 months after our other evaluation, and then we tried to get it going last fall and early this spring, and in the end, it just turned out that nobody wanted to do an evaluation back in January, so it dragged out to this full year time here. And this is quite a change going from just a once a year to twice a year situation. And yes, there are hiccups in this process, and but we didn't know when to do the formulative or the I can't keep track of the names. The main evaluation or the mid-year one. That's the way I'm going to call it, the mid-year, and what timing should be. We had lots of discussions to make that work at the right times. I'm hopeful things will continue on a timeline of roughly 6 months apart. I think it's essential that we don't get a blip of 3 months and 9 months. We need to try to keep a half-year time span in between, and I think the process will work a lot better as we go forward.
Right, and we had a couple of discussions early on when we finished the one last May, and as at our board reorganizational all last summer and in the fall. It wasn't that this dropped off our agenda or what we were working on or willing to work on. What we decided was we wanted to add that mid-year piece. And so when did it make the most sense to add the mid-year piece? So do we do 2 major summative evaluations back to back? And so the decision was made to postpone the full year one and do a half a year one with the full year coming in November. So that's kind of how we decided. We talked a lot about why we wanted to change that. And basically it has everything to do with lining up for the teacher or the superintendent contract. We want to be able to go in, if we do a full summary evaluation in November, then that if we were as a board to change directions and want a different superintendent, that would give our current superintendent enough time to start looking for a new job, and we would be at the forefront of searching for a new superintendent if we did a full evaluation in November and then started in on the negotiations for a new contract. So we were trying to align those times to make better sense. I hope that maybe clarifies a little bit too. Holly, did you have something to add?
Yes, I did. I agree with Heidi. The teachers and the administrators have been working around the clock. It's obvious, and it's impressive. When you did this summary, was there like a template that you had to follow?
I went off of what's been done in the past. Yes.
Okay, so was it an MSBA template or just something that has been done best practice in Red Wing?
Best practice in Red Wing, I believe.
Okay, because I agree with Jim, but I also understand why you did what you did. Does that make sense? So, you know, it would be interesting to see, and from a special ed person's perspective, when we write action plans and goals and we have like numbers, we have specifics, but what I'm hearing you say is that you're not at liberty to necessarily put specifics. But something as an example where it says future focus on next steps for referendum planning, meaning what? And then it said something in there about the futures special ed. What does that mean? Like special education study through futures. And I'm not criticizing you. I'm just asking if there's a way we can be more specific on this evaluation that pinpoints some specifics. But maybe I'm asking too much, and maybe it's something we should look at. But there's things that didn't go well. However, there's a lot of things going right, but I think it's important that we talk about specific things that are not going well and make sure that we focus on those.
Oh, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, Holly. And I would suspect that in November, when we do our full, thorough evaluation of the superintendent, that we will be getting into those bigger issues and digging deeper in. And you're right, we absolutely need to have a better process ourselves for this evaluation. And so I hope that we can do some more, perhaps maybe our summer workshop can be focused on this. Because I do think that it is important that we hear from everybody. It's not, I get to write a one-page summary, but it's important that I capture all of our ideas into one document. So that's helpful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah. It's also important, I think, that we do a board self-evaluation so we can understand where we're at and what we're up to, what we're doing. It's our job to direct the superintendent to the areas in which we find things being needed, things that are lacking in our district. I don't know that it helps to make every flaw public display. That's really our job to get that balanced, and then we get voted in or out depending on how we do our job. But it's not, we need to evaluate where we are doing as a board, as well as what our superintendent is doing, so that we can keep track of what we're doing. That's it.
That's an agenda item for a future discussion in a few minutes, Mike. Thanks. Arlen, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think to clarify the goals going forward, you were writing a summary. The evaluation is a confidential document between the board and the superintendent. The closed session meeting is confidential, but the goals going forward was in relation to a question on the evaluation form, and that was a summary of the comments made from various board members. I don't think it was any consensus. All of us agreed that that was it, but that was what I understood when I looked through it, yeah, well, this one said that we should take a look at doing this and that. And it was a summary of what board members would like to see us do going forward, and not by having a vote of the board members on each one of them. That's my take on it.
I agree. Well said.
No action is needed at this time. Does anybody have any last comments that they'd like to add to the evaluation summary?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
thank you. I think we talked at the closed session, just a synopsis was that the question, and I think Board Member Jones hit on it slightly there on the not understanding or not having a clear explanation as to how to grade. We had colors instead of a number, and not explanation as to what color meant which color meant which. For being for the valuation to be 12 months old, I think we all came to we had the discussion, I'm not sure we all came to the consensus that it was a very narrow evaluation, and it was not a full evaluation, which I was thought we were looking at. But when you get 4 or 5 questions about something, it didn't conclude the whole thing, and I'll just leave it as that.
Well, and that will be one thing that we should be considering as a board is, do we want to do a full evaluation every 6 months? Or do we want to do a full evaluation once a year and then a check-in progress report 6 months in? That's kind of what we as a board decided we wanted to do. And with the timing of how that all occurred, we were either going to do 2 full evaluations within 6 months, or we would have to put off one of them for 6 months just with the timing. So that's something we should definitely discuss as a board is, whether we'd want to do a full evaluation every 6 months. And we don't need to decide that now, but that's just some food for thought. All right, anything else? All right, then we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is the food service crisis for 2021.
I believe Brent Lexfold, our Director of Food Services, is on the call. So if we could pass it over to him, he can get the background information and recommendation.
Hello. Thanks, everybody. So the recommendations, first, I kind of just wanted to give a quick update just on the update of the meal services here during the COVID-19. So of course, food service has been running since the start of March, or March 16th. We've been running for 63 days, providing both the breakfast, lunch, and some supper, and of course, just the supper program at Sunnyside Elementary. To date, as of today, we have done 145,645 meals, which on average is about 2,200 meals per day. Wow. Even though school is coming to an end, our food service operations will not. We will continue moving forward into the summer months to support our families in the Red Wing community during this, of course, unprecedented time. We are currently reassessing locations, the staffing, and transportation to ensure the integrity of the program as well. So that's kind of where we're sitting on the meal program. Attached in the board doc, you'll find 2 documents. The first document demonstrates kind of the historical summary of the food service department. And you can kind of see the revenues and expenditures for the past years. The second document projects the pre-COVID-19 department for a 10-cent increase. And when you're looking at each of the years, it's just looking at the 10-cent increase in the coming year and then in the years to come as well. Of course, this meeting, we're just focusing on the next school year with the information that we have. Document does a nice job of illustrating the expected expenses and revenues and kind of projecting that as well. It's important to know too that these documents are kind of just made before the whole COVID-19 episode had kind of hit as well. It is also assuming that any profits that are made during the COVID meal service are directed to the replacement of equipment throughout the school district, kind of following the fall plan of what that looks like moving forward. So the current recommendation is to increase 10-cent increase for lunch across all sites, all grade levels, and a 5-cent increase at the breakfast meal as well at all sites and all grades.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Brent?
If I could add, Pam, that Brent and Jackie did present this information to the operations committee on a couple of different meetings, and so we got good feedback from them before, finalizing the recommendation and all the supporting materials.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Holly's got a question first, and then I'll come to you, Mike. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Holly.
Thanks, Pam. We did have a very extensive conversation about the recommendation, and it was, do we raise them now? Do we not raise them now? What are we looking at in the future in terms of families' incomes? What does that look like for everybody? And what we kind of came up with was the fact that if you need support in paying for your lunch, it's there. If you can pay for the lunch and the breakfast with this increase, that's awesome. It's no judgment. It is what it is. But if you have to reach out to somebody, reach out to Brent or somebody from the district to support it. But we felt like right now we still could move it a little bit forward just because of the cost of everything always moving up.
Thank you, Holly. Mike, all right, we'll go to you now.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry for interrupting. So I was curious, how are prices determined? Prices do always go up, but well, they don't always go up. Sometimes they don't. But I know we get a lot of subsidized food from the government, and I was just wondering how are food costs calculated, and how do you come up with 10 cents versus 5 cents? Things of that nature.
Got it. Mike, it's based off the paid lunch equity, and typically the state releases that document to the school food authorities. And what it allows us to do is take a look at all of the paid meals, and then based off a weighted average. So it takes the weighted average of all of the schools and says, you have to be at this price or be compensating the price increase by a la carte sales. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of mandated by the state and supported by the state, and we go with it.
Yep. And if food service, let's hypothetically say that our a la carte was just doing phenomenal, then we probably wouldn't have to look at a price increase, which sometimes when you look at other schools, maybe like Rochester comes to mind. They didn't increase their prices very much, and it was just because they had such a good a la carte program that was going on there too. So that kind of plays into the prices too of whether or not you increase or stay the same.
What you know about Rochester schools, but were some schools a la cartes much higher than other schools? Is it a function of the relative wealth of the school population that helps to drive a la carte menus versus the standard menu?
I think so. I think, when you look at a school district that might be in a pocket of more wealth, I think their food service programs tend to do just fine with a la carte. I also say that school districts that are, let's say, in a pocket where your free and reduced are much higher, and maybe they're not selling as much a la carte, they're just getting more reimbursement on their free and reduced, which could also play into whether or not they're even charging for their meals. Is that? It's not simple, is it? It's a fickle equation, and a lot has to do with, unfortunately rural America and urban. And I think sometimes a lot of the legislation really looks at the inner schools and not so much on the schools that are like what Red Wing is, or a lot of our neighboring schools.
Right.
Madam Chair?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Brent. I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Mike.
I think Heidi, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Brent, I just wanted to express appreciation. I know you give this careful analysis, you and the Operations Committee, and appreciate that process. But I'm really, really proud of this district for providing meals to kids, and I'm so glad we were able to do that quickly. We were in a fortunate position that many people, many districts weren't there, and yet we've been able to provide for families and children. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
I know, just so the board knows too, working, of course, very closely with the food shelf, just because what they're providing with their community and what we are doing is so hand in hand that we're having a tremendous impact on the Red Wing community for our families. And even our food shelf locally has said, wow, we haven't seen the increases that we thought we were going to see with food insecurity. And they're really attributing that to the meal program. So, thank you for, again, allowing me to be in the position and to take the program in so many different angles. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Heidi. And now Jim, sorry about that.
You're fine, Madam Chair. Thank you. Brent, I'll kind of echo what Board Member Jones said. You're doing a tremendous job there. You're bringing innovative things in there, forward thinking, looking at this whole program, taking it to the 3 meals a day to those group that come to our school, the first responders and the children of them, essential workers, and then all the other things going on. So again, thanks. You've put a lot of thought into this recommendation, and we shared those thoughts at our meeting. One thing we did talk briefly about, but didn't call it, I'm going to probably butcher this here. It's not a chef term, but it's the Angel Fund. I know, could we put that on our website if it isn't? And how people can want to contribute to help those that may need a little help occasionally on their meals, paying for their children's meals. Is there something you can speak briefly about that, and somewhere we can get that word out, or put it on our website, or put it on our emails on Sunday nights that people can contribute if they so desire?
Sure. A great idea. And it is our district's Angel Fund is attached to our community ed donation page. And
Okay.
so what I'll do is I'll reconnect with Don Wettern, because I think it's been established for about a year or so. And so I'll connect with Don Wettern to kind of see how we can get that information out.
Sure.
Kind of forefront anyways. So absolutely.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add, to follow up on that, there's not only is there an Angel Fund for food, but there's an Angel Fund for medical supplies. There's an Angel Fund for, oh gosh, now my brain's dead. For the high school food shelf, but they're well stocked as much as I understand at this moment. And they've got some money to sustain themselves, but there are other Angel Funds that support struggling families. And so maybe we could those at the same time as we are offering the connection to the Food Angel Fund.
Definitely.
I will make a motion to approve the breakfast and lunch prices for 2020, 2021 as proposed.
Michael seconds.
Moved by Heidi, seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? All right, then we will take a roll call vote. I will start with Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Hi.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you so much for presenting, Brent. We really appreciate it. Your time and your
Anytime.
staff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next item on the agenda is school board self-evaluation. This has been an ongoing conversation that we've had for a while. We feel, there have been some discussions on how we can be more productive in our functioning as a board. Both Ms. Jones and myself have done a bit of research on how we could do a board self-evaluation, and MSBA has a good model that we can utilize. Back in January, when MSBA had their annual conference, I attended a number of sessions actually on school board self-evaluation and met with the head of that department for MSBA while I was up there. And so I've learned kind of the ins and outs and the intricacies of how that evaluation would work. It revolves around 5 main areas of leadership within a school board. One is conduct and ethics. Number 2 is our vision. Number 3 is structure. Number 4 is accountability, and number 5 is advocacy and communication. And so what MSBA has done is they've put together a survey that we can all take. They will compile all of that data. And then if we so choose, that is free. And if we so choose, then we can have a facilitator from MSBA come and give us the results of that survey and lead us into discussion on areas to improve, places where we are working well, and where we can progress in the future. The good thing about using their model is that we can go back and redo that evaluation at any time within a year. So we can get real-time numbers and look at that and see how we're doing and compare and contrast that. So the evaluation itself is free, and I've got that link ready to go if we choose to move forward with that. So that's free. If we want an evaluator to come and go over the data from that evaluation, then that would be $975. They talk about being here for 2 to 3 hours for that evaluation piece. But she said, if it takes 4 hours or 5 hours, they'll be here as long as we need them to lead us through that conversation. Holly, you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. I think it's a fantastic idea. I've been looking forward to this part since I joined the board, and I've heard rumblings that we were going to do it. So way to go, Pam, in getting this started. Thank you.
My pleasure. Jeannie.
Thanks. I don't mean to bring up dates already, but do you have a date that you're planning to do? I know it says the June workshop, and were you looking at June 22nd or 29th? And the only reason I bring it up, and not that it has to be around me, but I will be out of town the 22nd. And that's the 4th Monday. So
I do know that MSBA is pretty open. So if currently our workshop is scheduled for the 22nd, I believe, but we certainly can have a discussion about moving that to the 29th if we'd like.
Well, and again, we're never going to please everybody just because, we're hitting vacation time, but I just wanted to be transparent about that. So.
And it sounds like Holly would be gone on the 22nd as well. Is everyone in, yes. Okay, so Holly is gone as well. Okay.
Madam
So
Chair,
yes, Jim.
I'm just going to bring it up just I'm not against the idea. I'm just thinking it's middle of the year. Is it advantageous because we've already, is it advantageous to wait till January when you get a possible, some
No.
new members on, a new member or two or whatever on the board at that time?
I think a case can be made either way, Jim. You know, I think that if we do it now, we still have 6 months of this board left to work together. And I think that the information that we glean would be very helpful for us to function well for the rest of the year. And if we wait till January, your point is very valid. There will be, you know, the board every other year is a new board. Heidi, you have something to add to that, I bet.
Well, yeah, and I've thought about the timing too. I just think back to what I've challenged the board with before. In our education plan, it says we will pursue and apply best practices. And this is one of those best practices. And it's originally designed for a side-by-side implementation with the superintendent's evaluation, and now it's time for the board to evaluate itself. We're the only ones that can hold ourselves accountable because we're at the top of this organization. So, right, the 2-year turnover is always something we have as a pattern here. I think we do need some work on understanding our oversight role versus management, and I think we need to have that discussion, would be most helpful soon. The accountability piece, obviously, is we're demonstrating, modeling for the district that we are lifelong learners. We are willing to learn and discuss and improve. And really, the $1,000, it's less than $1,000, and that's a bargain. It's subsidized. This service is subsidized in part by our annual dues to MSBA and all the other districts in the state. So I would vote to have it in June. I'm available June 29th if the 22nd doesn't work. I would just like us to move forward with this. And as you said, Pam, we still have an opportunity this year to work on ourselves as a board.
Holly?
Yeah, I'm going to just make a comment about the continuation of people using oversight versus management and challenging people that they may be doing something wrong. I'm real curious to know how we've gone 7 years without a new evaluation system, how we have gone this full year without math PD that we were told we were going to get, how we have struggled in so many different ways that people keep throwing oversight versus management around like it's funny. It needs to stop.
Mike?
Okay. I don't know if I'm on my phone or on the computer. I think I'm on the phone. Okay. Except I'm echoing back. I would tend to agree with Holly, and also that with Heidi, that we need to evaluate ourselves on a regular basis, the same way we evaluate the superintendent on a regular basis, or should, and the same way we should evaluate teachers on a regular basis. As Heidi said, we're the only ones outside the voters who can hold ourselves accountable. As a board, we hold ourselves accountable to each other. And it's a vital function, and I think the sooner you get it done, the better. It's been a long time since we've done it.
Arlen?
Yeah, I just, I don't know what the right date is. We're coming into summer, but you can't keep putting it off. I do believe that it's not real fair to do, as much as it'd be good to do it in January, I don't think that's real fair to brand new board members. So you're evaluating new board members right after they've taken the oath of office, and that just doesn't quite fit to me.
No.
Well, and if we were to do it in June, that would actually be some good data to bring into an organizational meeting in January for new board members to say, here is, where we've been, here's what we're working on. And so that might be a better introduction than, hey, how are we doing? You've been here 2 weeks. So, I guess I would prefer to see it in June as well. Is there anybody in our group who cannot make it on the 29th? I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here right now, but it sounds like everyone is on board with this. So we'll entertain a motion soon, but I'm just wondering if anybody is not available on June 29th. Okay. Any further discussion on this? Well, then I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to conduct a school board self-evaluation with MSBA using their follow-up, their questionnaire and the follow-up workshop. And we've determined that'll be June 29th.
Janie will second it.
Any other discussion? Okay, then I will take a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So that passes, and we'll be working on an evaluation. I will get that link out to you before the end of the night. We have about 7 days to finish that evaluation. So if you could carve out about 20 to 30, well, I think it takes about 25 to 30 minutes sometime this week to fill those out, that would be great. Okay, moving on to the MOU. Superintendent Anderson, can you explain that for us, please?
Sure. In the support personnel contract, we have provisions for members to donate sick leave to a member. In this particular case, the one who'd received the sick day donation did not meet the specific criteria, but after careful review in our human resources department, we concluded that we'd want to work with the support personnel on this particular MOU, which would allow people to donate sick leave to this particular person. There's some exceptional circumstances, and so we felt that it was appropriate to request.
Questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Arlen? Yep.
I'm just going to come out right now. My wife's a member of the Paraprofessionals Union, and due to avoid any potential conflicts of interest, I will be abstaining from any discussion and votes on this matter. Thank you.
Good to know. Thank you, Arlen. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Just a question, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I was looking through this. I didn't see it in there, so it must not be an issue. The people that accumulate or are not accumulate, receive sick leave from others. Is there a payout if a person retires or resigns of sick leave? And if so, are they going to be able to leave, retire, or resign with sick leave that they may accumulate from someone else, or is that kept separately only as need basis?
Yeah, that's a very good question. you know, we will be calculating how many days of unpaid leave this particular person will have. And so it would essentially be a reimbursement of days for those unpaid days. So she won't have, you know, accumulated sick leave at the end of it.
I didn't see it there, but it doesn't hurt to ask the question.
Yep, no problem. And then, you know, obviously there may be some people who donate the sick leave who would be eligible to receive payment, you know, for those sick days, but they're donating it. So that could decrease their particular payout.
Any other comments or questions?
Pam, this is
Nothing.
Janie. I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
I'll second.
Motion made by Janie, seconded by Holly. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote, and I will start with Ms. Fair this time.
Aye.
And Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks is abstaining.
Abstain.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is school board committee assignments. And we, in our January meeting, we always discuss and appoint people to committee assignments. In the last couple of weeks, Ms. Tower has asked to be removed from the non-certified negotiations committee, which negotiates with custodians, cooks, and support personnel. And so we have the process of filling that open position. At this time, my recommendation would be to have Mr. Bryant fill in and serve in her place until our next committee reorganization meeting in January. And so that is the recommendation that I have at this time. Any comments or questions? Heidi?
Thank you. I guess I was a little surprised to see this, just, and it is what it is. But I would recommend in the future, when we do this process in the beginning of the year in the reorganization, everybody has an opportunity to provide input to the chair about their assignments and stuff. So I wasn't even aware that there was an opening here. And I understand kind of where you're coming from about, you know, evaluating who's available and you know, on choosing a different board member to fill in. But I guess as part of, I would like to see us announce the opening, notify the school board members, and then we would all have an opportunity to indicate interest. And then, so I'm fine with what we're going to probably do here tonight. I would just say the process probably needs to be improved a little bit, just letting us know, the rest of us know, because that's generally what we do at the beginning of the year for committee assignments too.
Fair enough. Mike?
Let's see. Oh, I am on. Okay. Yeah, important for all the school board members to get experience in negotiations on some level, and we really start with the this group, and I'm not sure what the holdup is, or why Holly would withdraw from it, but it's an important thing for all board members to participate in before you get to the teacher negotiations, which get much more substantial and consequential. But it's an important step in learning how to work on the board And I welcome Jim joining it. That's all.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve that committee assignment change then. This is Janie.
Mike
Motion made
will
by
second.
Jamie. Mike, second. Any other discussion? All right, so we'll take a roll call vote. I'll start with you, Mr. Christensen, this time.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you for that. Jim, welcome to negotiations.
Thank you for asking me.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the non-renewal of probationary teacher, Mr. Nathan Weiss. Mr. Anderson, would you like to give us an introduction?
Sure. 2 weeks ago, there was consideration for multiple non-renewals of teaching contracts. The recommendation for Nate was delayed by 2 weeks so that the board could get some additional information. And, the recommendation that came from Mr. Palmatier, the middle school principal, is to terminate and non-renew the teaching contract of Nate Weiss, probationary teacher. I did provide board members with teacher evaluations for Nate, as well as some other background information that contained confidential information. And again, it's confidential just because it's, teacher evaluation. So that's why I sent it just to board members. And so the recommendation, there have been several or numerous communications from parents and staff members about this particular issue in support of Mr. Weiss. My recommendation is still to follow Mr. Palmatier's recommendation because he directly supervises Nate and other middle school teachers and has come to the conclusion of terminating and non-renewing his contract. So that's what's on the table, and I'm able to answer some questions as they arise.
Would anyone like to ask a question or make a comment? Janie?
Yep, I just had a question. Is it usual, how many years is a teacher on probation? Can you just clarify that again publicly?
Sure. Usually it's a 3-year probationary period, but the school district did extend it by 1 additional year. So he's been on probation here for 4 years. One thing I need to stress, when I say probation or probationary, that doesn't mean that he was in trouble, that, anything like that. It's just the term that the state uses when talking about teachers. So right. Teachers are probationary. Yeah, they're on probation until they receive continuing contract rights. So I just want to make that crystal clear when I say he was a probationary teacher for 4 years. Yep.
Other comments?
I'll say.
Oh, who is that?
Who's
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
I think we need to pay attention to not just the people who contact us from the community, but also the staff that we hire to serve our district. This is a math teacher, a valued position in schools in Minnesota and across the country. And he's been with us for 3 years and was given an extension for a 4th year. And he still has not been considered as somebody worth keeping on by the principal of that school. The person who's leading that school, who directs the education of that school, who evaluates all teachers in that school and makes recommendations on all new teachers coming into the school. To think that we as a board or the people out in the public who may have had great experiences with the teacher, I'm sure that he works well with a lot of students, but it's pretty clear that he doesn't work well with all students in his classroom, whether there's a supervisor in there or not, or an evaluator in there or not. It's what we have. It's what the evaluator has to deal with. Can we do a better job of evaluating our staff, our new staff, our old staff, people who've been around? Absolutely. There's no doubt that's always possible. But we need to take what we have and work with that. And when a teacher gets so much time to fit into the goals and the planning and the organization of a school, and they're found wanting by the person who is in charge of that school, that should be a powerful statement. And he's given it even an extra year to try to fit in. And it's an essential position. It's a very important, difficult to fill position. And the people in charge think that he needs more work. And we can't afford to do that work, because if he doesn't succeed, he's with us for 30 years of substandard education for the students that he serves. That sounds terrible, but I really think we need to take the principal's considerations and evaluations as what they are. He wrote, Principal Palmatier wrote a strongly worded letter expressing his feelings and that he would be willing to work with the teacher if we decide to support the teacher and keep that going. But it's extremely rare, as Principal Palmatier said, no school board has ever overridden his decisions on hiring, not hiring. And I think that for the school board to try to take a stand on this with all the educational experience that we as a school board lack would be a big mistake. I think we need to trust the people who are in charge of our schools. And if we don't trust the people who are in charge, then we should find a way to deal with that, but not micromanage their management of their school that they are responsible for.
Thank you, Mike. Holly, you're up next.
Was it me or Janie?
Did you have something further, Janie?
Nope, I think it's Holly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, though.
Yeah, after reading everybody's input, and it was a lot, and talking to different people, and what it pointed out to me was the glaring lack of, I guess, micromanaging of how we are evaluating people throughout our district. So this situation, which is extremely unfortunate, happened to shine a light on a overarching system that sounds to me like a colossal failure. So does he get caught up in the crosshairs of it because we didn't do our job as a board to make sure that we had effective evaluation systems in place? I don't know, but it seems awfully telling to me that when people write a letter and don't acknowledge the fact that the evaluation system has been flawed, and that it was never taught to this instructor about what the evaluation system actually was looking for or looking at, other than, hey, check out that website. We don't have a mentoring system in place. We don't have time for them to meet. So as somebody who's been in education for 25 years, Mike, please don't include me in your reference to uneducated board about education. It is not difficult to get rid of a tenured teacher if they're not performing. It shouldn't be. It's management. So I really struggle with the system that we have in place, which to me is a non-system that penalizes new teachers in some odd way. And then we all band together and say, well, we've got to support and not micromanage. I don't really even know what that means. And I'm being facetious. I know exactly what it means.
Arlen, you're up next.
Thank you. This is really difficult because, as I said, nobody's ever challenged, I guess I might put the word out, challenged the idea that our principal is recommending somebody not be renewed. But yet we also have a great many people in our community, respectable community, teachers, saying so many great things, and I'm hearing so many great things about how Mr. Weiss has affected the lives of their children and done great things. And so it just tears me to have to make a decision like this. I want to do the right thing for our children, but I also want to do the right thing for Mr. Weiss. And I asked, and I haven't heard back, so hopefully Carson will weigh in on this, if there's another, what our options are, be it non-renew or to renew and let them get tenure, or if there's another option of another year of probation so we can get our system in place. Because I saw some great things in some of the information that I got, and I also see some challenges that are there, and I don't know if I'm ready. I just don't know. I'll decide when the vote time comes what I'm going to actually do here, but I feel I have to support our administration to make these decisions, but something's missing somewhere when I hear so many great things on the other side, and that's what's tearing me apart here right now. So I just hope each board member reviews this as best they can, making the right decisions. I hope going forward, regardless of what this decision is made tonight, we come up with we review our evaluation procedures and recommendations, how to go about them. And looking at the data that was put in front of me, Mr. Marzala or whatever is the method we apparently evaluate thing. Whatever happened to people just evaluating people because of how they get to know them instead of you got to look at each one of these things. I don't know what the answer is. I'm sure there are students that have struggled and students that have excelled in his class. And you're going to have that no matter what you have as a teacher. And what I've read does not make it look like he's a bad teacher. It looks like he's a teacher that did not live up to the standards of the evaluators. And I'm not going to say that's wrong or right. I'm glad we have evaluators, and I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Hey, Pam, could I just jump real quick?
Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, Arlen asked about options. And obviously, there's, approve or reject, the proposed resolution. I did check with the school's attorney to see if a 5th year of probation could be offered. The attorney said yes, that is a possibility. I will say that I've never heard of a school actually doing that before. But at the same time, our attorney did say that that was a possibility.
Thank you.
Jim?
Need your mic on, Jim.
There we go. Bear with me. Thank you for, I had a great conversation for a while with myself here. So, As an elected school board member, our role is much greater than oversight of one area of it, because people feel they need to contact us to ask questions, to send emails, to do call us, however they stop us in the street, stop us wherever. We have received a number of emails and calls and people stopping and talking to you, all kind of in favor of Mr. Wees. But, we're hearing really two different things. We're hearing from one, we're hearing from the school. Been doing evaluations for 40 years. My job, my other positions, they're tough. Nobody likes them. Nobody wants them, but they're necessary. What you do in an evaluation, if you have an issue or something going on that the person needs to be watched or challenged or to modify what they're doing, you come up with a plan. You then have that plan. Either the person signs it, doesn't sign it, but you acknowledge that he or she did not. Then you outline the plan and what you want that person to do to meet the expectations of the examiner or the evaluator in this case. I think a couple people have said this, and I think it's correct. Our system may not be the managing that or going in that direction. So we're missing something. Something's missing. And I hope no matter what happens on this vote tonight, whichever direction we go, because you're right, Arlen, it's we're hearing a lot of things. We're hearing one side and another side. So however we go, I hope at the end of the day, our process ends up being a better process to help anyone and everyone down the road. And Holly's right too. A document on evaluations doesn't have to be an employer doesn't have to keep an employee if they're not meeting the expectations, no matter what field you're in, and that it falls on the management or lack of management, as some places go with that. So I appreciate everybody that's reached out to me, to us as a board, and we'll see what happens tonight on this. No matter what, I hope at the end of the day, things will we'll have a better process out of it, because there must be something missing there that I haven't put a finger on it yet.
Thank you, Jim. Heidi?
Yeah, I think this is one of those areas that we are still struggling with what our role is as a board. I'm going to trust our administrators. I believe all the feedback we've gotten should be returned back to the appropriate district personnel, that chain of command, chain of communications that we need to sort out. I've heard from some other leaders in the district that this has never happened before. Why are we doing this now? I want to make a student-focused decision on this. I believe that the three different observers that came to the same conclusion about determining the fate of this educator, it points to consistency, and I'm going to trust that experience there. I think that's my job as a board member. I am not trained in this field other than trying to look out for the best for students. So those are my thoughts.
And Jamie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with many people on the idea that our system needs to have some overhaul and look at. So I'd encourage us to do that. And I just want to say, by no doubt, Mr. Wees must be, I'm sure a very, very nice, wonderful man. In my conversations with him at the Personnel Committee, obviously he seems like a very wonderful man. So I want to just publicly state that, obviously, that there's no doubt there. But I do see, as a school board member, I'm most concerned with having the best educators that we can have. And I guess I would just like to remind the board that Mr. Weiss has had 3 years as a new teacher, plus been given another year, a 4th year extra probationary time. And now we're having to make a decision on, we can argue if tenure is tenure and how easy it is to, get educators out if they're not doing their job. But I take tenure pretty seriously, as I know most of you do too. And I guess that's what I'm basing my opinion on, is that I feel like we've given a lot of options here. And that 4th year to me was that final option that we gave him. And I guess I'm just not at this point ready to give tenure to someone. And I would really encourage them to apply for the job again. And maybe our administration will feel differently or see something that, hasn't been there yet, or maybe nobody else applies for the job. But at this point, I just feel like I need to know that we're hiring the best of the best. And to me, I'm not seeing that in 4 years of evaluation. So that's where I'm at.
And when we had this discussion 2 weeks ago, I felt like we were kind of on uncharted territory, because we've never had in my time on the board, I've never had a non-renewal person come forward and challenge their own non-renewal. And it was important to give us 2 extra weeks to look at this from all perspectives and get a little bit more information. But I'm hearing, and what I feel personally as well, that we absolutely as a district can do a better job for our teachers in terms of evaluation. And so I would direct to do a full review of how we're evaluating, how effective our current evaluation system is, because our teachers aren't only going to be as good as the feedback that we're giving them. If we're putting time and energy and effort into an evaluation system, we better make it work. And what I'm hearing from feedback from teachers and administrators and staff is that the system is not working the way it should be working. And so let's make it a change. I would tend to agree with what I'm hearing from most of you, that I wasn't in the classroom, and even if I was in his classroom, I have no idea what to evaluate. And so that is not my role. And I do have to go ahead and trust our administration. Now, and I think you said it, Mike, if we have some issues with trust of our administration, then that's a different conversation for a different time. But it's part of this discussion too. I don't want to make light of that either. But at this point, I have to side with recommendation and evaluation of our very professional, educated people who've been charged with this task at this time. Is there any other discussion or anything anybody else would like to add?
I will move the
All right.
resolution relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of Nathan Weiss, a probationary teacher. Heidi Jones.
Looking for a second?
Mike will second.
Seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? We'll take a
I
roll
would
call
just say
vote.
that-
Oh, go
Well,
ahead.
hold on. I would just say that we've heard from his supporters, which is great. It's good to hear that, and I have a lot of faith in a lot of those people who wrote in, checking out or making sure that we have a functional and well-run evaluation system is also important. Absolutely. We also need to. We're not hearing from people who are not supporting the teacher, from people who may have pulled kids from his class because of other issues our evaluators have found. And I wish him luck, but to be a math teacher and get to make it and then still being found wanting is something that's it makes me question whether he is the right person for the job. Ready for the vote.
All right. Moved by Heidi, seconded by Mike for non-renewal. I will begin the roll call vote with Mr. Bryant,
This is a tough one. I'll vote aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Nay.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay,
If I could just add one quick commentary, these are the hardest decisions that we have to make, especially when good people are involved doing good things. And so, I appreciate your diligence in really considering all options in this, and especially the fact that you're willing to listen to people along the way. And I think that's really good.
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
with a result of this, can we put something on a 3-month, 90 days or so, report back on what other evaluation process, or give us an idea, because we've all acknowledged that there probably is something not going on, but something that needs to be improved on. If we can get some in the next 90 days, since we're doing e-learning and stuff, from our administrative team as to some type of evaluation process and plan to help the new teachers that come in, because we heard that from a number of them. There's something there that can help them, so we can keep and retain a good solid teacher. And in this case, Mr. Weiss may have benefited from that. So we need to, I'd like to have some type of report and some type of a dialogue as to what we can do better to not have this type of discussion in the future.
I agree, Jim, and I actually had, but I'd wanted a full report by the new teacher orientation in August. So that gives us some time to evaluate what our current practices are, and get some feedback and some discussion on what we can do better for that time. Not Janie. Mike, you had something?
Yeah, I agree with, would be good to review it. We should also be apprised of what our current plan is. I was thinking a workshop, but maybe that would be kind of whatever, tedious. But yeah, we should get a better understanding as a school board of what the evaluation system is that we're doing, and as well as our own evaluation, our superintendent evaluation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea. And it may not be a bad idea to spend a workshop doing that. We'll give that some thought. And if any of you have any suggestions, if you want to bring that to a workshop, let us know. And we can work through that. I think that's a great idea.
I say we just leave it up to you, Matt. We just leave it up to you, Madam Chair, to figure out if you want to bring it as a school board topic at a meeting or a workshop.
All right. Well, thank you. It's a difficult decision and a difficult discussion to have. All right. Moving on to item 4.7, the Human Resources Plan and Budget Reduction. We have Jackie Paradis and Mr. Anderson presenting more information on this.
Yeah, if I could just give a brief introduction, and then Jackie will talk about some finances. We're going to review 5-year financial projections, the latest version of the Human Resources Plan, and proposed reductions. Jackie will go over financial projections. It's based on multiple options as far as what might happen And so it might be a little complicated, and but we feel it's really important to share this news, even though it's not particularly rosy. Then the next phase will be talking in more specifics about the human resources plan. So I'll go over that in more detail. The recommendation though is just to authorize the priority 1 proposals, not priorities 2 through 6, although they could be added later. And then finally, we'll discuss potential budget reductions. And so I'll go over that in more detail. But if we could pass it on to Jackie, who can talk about financial projections first.
All right. I am going to try to bring up the presentation on my screen here so I can talk along and you can follow along with me. Give it a second here. So we got to talk about what our resources are. There are our staff, our dollars, any talent we have, any skills we have in those staff, and also the time it takes us to do things, how efficient we are. That's what I mean by time. In the Finance Committee, we've talked about a lot of things. The first thing that sets up our budget every year is our enrollment projections. This slide here shows us history going back to the 13-14 school year, and then what we're projecting out to the 24-25 school year, with the current school year in kind of the blue and white check. This is only K-12 enrollment. When we're talking budget, you're usually hearing us talk a little higher numbers because we include those early childhood special ed children in that count, because we get general ed revenue on them as well for their special ed service hours. So as you can see here, we've had pretty steady to slightly declining enrollment, and we project that to continue on. Base plan assumptions, what I call the base plan assumptions, is where we started the year, what we've done.
Could I jump in just for a second, just to make sure that everyone is seeing what you're presenting?
Yeah.
If you're following along on the board meeting, click on people, and then scroll down to see where it says Jackie Paradis, and then in parentheses presentation. So you have to click on that, and then you see your screen. So sorry, Jackie, for interrupting. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew exactly where to go.
Okay, I'll give you a minute here. If you were on grid view, that's when you have to do the change. If you're on presentation view, it changes automatically. So sorry, I forgot that point. Our base plan is where we were at the beginning of the year and what we assumed in our referendum. So we were going to continue our enrollment as projected. We did make adjustments to our enrollment projections as we needed to. Continued with the 2% increases in state funding. This is what we knew as of last winter when we were discussing this. Updating no changes to staffing, going on with the current staffing as we are right now. Cost increases as agreed upon in the referendum plan. Steady federal funding, and then a referendum of $1,650 per pupil through fiscal 24. This winter, we worked with the Finance Committee to refine assumptions. We will continue the enrollment as projected in the earlier slide. 2% increases in state funding, no staffing changes, cost increases the same, steady federal funding, the referendum continuing through 24. But then we added in some small incremental reductions totaling $1.2 million. So for FY21, so next school year, we projected $150,000 worth of reductions. And then for fiscals 22 through 24, $350,000 worth of reductions. Why we did it this way was the smaller incremental reductions, even over time, totaled less than what we would have had to cut going into fiscal 24 if we would have done nothing up to that point. All right, so here are those two plans. So the base plan, no changes. So no reductions at all, is the dark blue line you see there. The Winter Finance Committee plan is the lighter blue line on the top. If you are thinking about our fund balance goal of about 5%, that hovers just above that $2 million line. Okay, just for some reference points for you. All right, so I took Karsten's human resources plan he's been presenting. So these are the priority 1 items to reduce the math overloads that we currently have at Red Wing High School with about a $21,000 savings. Add a $42,500 net of aid. We'd add a school psychologist for $52,500 net of aid. And this will allow our school psychologist to be a leader in building MTSS teams within our buildings. Karsten can go into this more, but as I understand, we have this working really well in one building right now, and we'd like to implement this more district-wide. The Sunnyside principal would oversee the technology department. So we approved an IT administrator earlier in March. This person would oversee and recommend network infrastructure changes, and then the principal would be oversee the budget, the staff in the tech department, and then any tech integration planning. The Burnside principal would also serve as the Tower View principal just because of location proximity. The director of support services will retire. We'll add a director of teaching and learning at about a $7,500 savings. We'll eliminate the curriculum coordinator position. And then we are also going to rename the PBIS coaches to teaching and learning coaches so that they will both coach staff in best practices on discipline like they've been doing, but also on instruction. Changes in the buildings and grounds department as approved. Emergency and first call subs. The total cost of priority 1 is $64,750. On this, I did a variation A or a scenario A, a scenario B, and a scenario C to add in if we added reductions into our priority 1, what that would look like. So scenario A is just what I laid out before, no additional reductions. Scenario B is 60 hours of gen ed, reduces 60 hours of gen ed support time. That's $160,000, $65,000 of savings. So then the budget impact with priority A additions and some reductions, we'd have a $100,000 savings. Scenario C would be A plus B plus an additional reduction of 1 hour per day of class 1 and 2 support for an additional $135,000 savings. The budget savings then would be $235,000. All right, so we put that in our line graph. So this gray here was the base plan with no changes. This is the winter finance committee. This really, really light blue line would be, or let's start. The dark blue line is A, so that would be if we just added all of the priority 1 items and did no further reductions. The lighter blue line is B, if we did the 60 hours of gen ed support time reduction. And then the light blue line here would be C, which is an additional 1 hour of support time would be reduced. All right, and we also did some slides for priority 2, if that is of interest, if you're interested in adding that on. So priority 2s were the early childhood and special education administration changes, which would cost $70,000 net of state aid, would be a phased retirement for the COBBLE director and additional sped ed administration as recommended by Futures, and a dean of students or student support coordinator for Red Wing High School to help oversee 8th grade and potentially also be the district assessment coordinator. The cost of priority 2 alone is $155,000. The cost of priority 1 and 2 with no further reductions was $219,750. Again, on this, we did an A, a B, and a C, with the B scenario being the 60 hours of gen ed support time, and C being an additional 1 hour per day of class 1 and class 2 support. As you can see, scenario B still has a cost impact of $54,000. Scenario C would have an $80,000 savings. And this one again, under here is base plan no change, is the gray. This gray here is the Winter Finance Committee assumptions, and the colors got reversed on this one. So this one is A plan, this is B, and this is C. Seeing where we end up when we get to fiscal 24. So why did we choose support staff? This wasn't an easy decision, but over the years, some hours have crept up beyond the level approved during 2016. They have crept up for needed reasons, but sometimes when those reasons have moved on or the situations have changed, the hours haven't been reduced or reevaluated. So we need to reevaluate everyone's hours regardless of what we choose to do. Compensatory funding or basic skills funding is what we use to fund the educational assistance at the elementary level. It is no longer enough to cover these costs. For next year, we're projecting that will be about $190,000 short of covering our general education assistant costs. But we can cover them out of the general fund, but that's just a choice we need to make. We also have more general education assistants than districts with similar enrollment and poverty. And that's where the next slide gets to. So this is a straight FTE or full-time equivalent count. These are districts, when we looked at districts across the state who had enrollment of 2,500 to 3,500 and poverty between 30 and 40%. These are 5 comparison districts that we've come up with. You can see Red Wing Schools is above the majority of them. Thief River Falls is getting pretty close, but these are 3-year history based on what the state had in available data and where we were with FTE count. Other things to consider when you're making the decision. As of April 20th, we were 5 students under our current budget projections, which is going to be about a $50,000 loss on this school year. We know the state's budget surplus is now projected deficit. We don't know what aid payments are going to look like going forward. Will there be a tax shift? Will there be cash flow metering so that we have to borrow? We don't know what school will look like this fall. Carson talked earlier in his administrative report that we are currently planning for 3 options. And then we also don't know, now that families have had a taste for online learning, will we lose students to online schools because they don't know what our school is going to look like in the fall, or because their student, this has been a niche for their student and that's something they want to continue. We've talked about a potential local charter school. The other thing we're hearing a lot, especially as we try to register parents for kindergarten, is they're waiting to know what school looks like in the fall before they register their child. They may choose to wait a year. Just something else to consider. In Finance Committee at the end of April, we ran a 1%. So if instead of getting 2 and 2 on the state aid formula, what does a 1 and 1 look like for the next 4 years? Well, this was our base plan at 2 and 2. This is the Winter Finance Committee. And this light blue line, and I'm sorry, I tried to change the colors, is what 1 and 1 would look like. By the end of our referendum cycle, if we do nothing, we'll be below our fund balance goal. Are there any questions? I feel like I talked really fast.
Jackie, what is that middle blue line?
That would be our base plan with no changes. That'd be our current staffing and 2% on the state aid formula going forward.
Spending down to 0 in the balance.
Correct.
The reserve fund.
Correct.
Thanks.
I was just going to say, Jackie, for people listening, can you explain what the unassigned fund balance is and why it's important to keep a good amount of money in there? And what our goal has been as a district?
Okay, so our goal in as a district has been to keep a 5% fund balance reserve. So our unassigned fund balance is the funds in our district that are not earmarked for specific tasks. They're the ones we have the most control over how they are spent. They're not earmarked for things like school safety or long-term facility maintenance. These are basically the unassigned or undesignated funds that the school board has the most say in how we spend. districts in the state and the Department of Ed use the unassigned fund balance as a predictor, or I can't think of the right word. They look at it as an indicator of the financial health of the district. We also want to keep money in there. It's a rainy day fund in case something happens like COVID-19, but it's also so we can cash flow borrow. So the state only pays us 90% of what they owe us in any given year. So that 5% helps us cash flow throughout the year till we get the state aid payments coming in the following fiscal year.
And if the future payments to schools drop, or if they start shifting funding, it allows us a little bit of leeway to not have to borrow money to pay for those cost shifts.
Correct. We're lucky right now. We are on the up end of the referendum curve, but if they do some state aid payment shifts in excess of what we can afford, we will have to cash flow borrow. That is one of the unknowns right now.
And I guess I'd just like to remind the board that Jackie did a what-if scenario of 1% and 1%. And as I reported, and the best information I had from Minnesota School Boards Association on Friday morning was count on 0 and 0. So that light blue line would go even deeper, because fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, it's a very high likelihood you will see no increase on the general education formula.
Can you guys just clarify to me, so with the referendum and knowing kind of where we were going to be at in enrollments and projections, this is on way back one of your slides on page 61, but in fiscal year 21, you were already kind of, when we talk about those small incremental reductions that are going to have less effect, I believe, on my staff and students, you were already thinking about doing 150,000 for this coming year. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
Yes.
Correct. And then again, in 22 to 24, another 350,000, correct? Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess that's something that's really important to me to highlight as I make my decisions, is that really we're still below that with a couple of the scenarios that you're showing us. You know, so really we should almost be producing more. And I don't mean to add that, but I don't really mean to, but again, am I understanding that correctly? Mm-hmm. We could, yes. Right. And that's really with the idea of keeping the fund balance, you know, at 5%, which I believe is still below best practice in most school boards. I mean, I think we've had that conversation a lot.
Very low.
To 5%, but that is low.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Say, Jackie,
Yes.
what were the, did you lower the negotiations estimates, not for this coming year, but for subsequent years?
I have not at this point. We hadn't discussed that.
Yeah, and so that's just a reminder for the board that, you know, the financial projections as far as settlements with teachers, administrators, support personnel, you know, are at a certain level in these projections, even though we've lowered the state aid projections. And so obviously we'll need to adjust those negotiations parameters moving forward. So just a reminder that that will also be a factor.
Other comments?
What kind of an impact would that have?
Since the majority of our budget is staff salary and benefits, it could have quite a substantial impact depending on what we decide those assumptions should be.
Didn't we have a number or a percentage a year or two ago about what the increases in the salary, in the contract equal up to or add up to?
I'm not recalling it off the top of my head.
Could be 2% or 5% of our budget.
Yeah, We usually assume a 2% COLA, and for most groups, steps and lanes is another 1.5 to 2%.
All right, and then those add up to almost double that, almost 4%,
Yep.
right?
And again, that was all pre-COVID. So
That that was all pre-COVID.
Right. So if the state is giving us a 0 or 1, obviously that will reduce what we feel we can offer our staff. At the same time, beating my dead drum, it indicates what the state thinks is important to the future of the state of Minnesota. And if they don't think that education is worth funding, every decrease in funding or every smaller increase in funding that we get cuts the buying power of the education dollars in the future. And we're dealing with that now. And if they do it again in a couple of years or in a year or two, that will stifle yet more the buying power of education dollars. And the only investment that the state needs to make is in its people, in my opinion. I mean, you can do roads, you can do all kinds of things, but the people are who make the state. And if we get small increases in funding, we will have to deal with it, but the state will have to deal with it in the long run. And I suppose every state will, because no states are going to come out any better in this. But it's really an opportunity to increase the investment in the future. It would be a wise investment as opposed to put hard assets. Anyway, that's my thing. Yeah, it's a tricky situation. We've talked about it in the finance committee plenty. We need to decide now. Cutting early is better than cutting late. You save more money up front. I was struck by the ed assistants seem to take it very personally when we have to adjust our budget and it ends up landing on them, they think. I don't think it's going to land on just them. I think it's going to continue along the spectrum of all of our employees. And the ed assistants do a great job, and they do an important job in our classrooms. The contrast with what we are looking at, the cutting some ed assistant time and adding some administrative support is a balance. And I would think that giving the administration a little more support also supports the teachers in the classroom and could well mitigate any problems that we have with ed assistants, although it's always better to have more people involved. Unfortunately, we're at the point where we can't have a whole lot of more people. We need to make best use of our assets that we do have. And I think we've made a strong case for administrative support being good for the district. And I feel for the ed assistants, and I don't like, nobody likes cutting jobs, nobody likes cutting hours. But attrition could take care of a bit of it. Salaries do indeed decrease, and we have a little extra money. We may be able to keep some on, but I think we need to make a commitment here to stay on track with what we promised with our referendum, and that unfortunately involves balancing and keeping our budget under control. And it's a tough decision, but it's one that we have to deal with frequently.
Thank you, Mike. Heidi?
I guess I need to hear So I'm looking at page 9 of this presentation, the Human Resources Plan Priority 1. I think that's the appropriate starting point to be somewhat fiscally conservative at this time, because as Director Christensen pointed out, if we don't make the appropriate cuts now, which were really already part of our right sizing referendum plan, if we don't make those decisions now, the financial instability that I believe is coming in front of us quite clearly is going to compound the problems in the coming years. So when I look at the Human Resources Plan Priority 1 variations, I'm trying to assess how we're adding some Priority 1 pieces, then we're reducing. The presentation says 60 hours, but Carson's information changed to 40 hours. So I want to discuss that point. And then, you know, and you've laid this out very nicely, that it's a budget impact of 235,000. All of that is a little bit of a setup to say, how are we assessing our current $200,000 surplus at this time into future planning? If someone could answer that, that would help me a lot.
So Heidi, just for context, are you talking about how we think we're going to come out with the COVID scenario in our savings?
Yes.
Okay. Well, some of that savings right now is being eaten up by declining enrollment.
Okay. Yep. Right. That's a minus 50,000. Okay.
Yep. And I just did the finance committee projections for next week, so there it goes farther than 50,000. I think I was looking at a shortage of 8 when I was looking at it this morning.
And what was that category again, Jackie?
The enrollment?
Nope, past the enrollment. What was the other next piece? Or was that all enrollment? You said
I was only talking enrollment at this point.
Okay. Okay.
I just said that we're beyond the 5 that we had in April. That number is bigger now. I just got the enrollment report for May this morning. It's larger.
Okay. Yep.
So we're probably looking at, you know, maybe $80,000 or $90,000 of that projected surplus is going to go towards our loss in enrollment.
That loss. Yep.
We've also continued to purchase cleaning supplies and protective equipment. So there's probably another 20,000 of it there.
Okay.
So.
All right. And that's what I wanted to understand is that a constant or is it moving? And you've just described very well that it's getting lower and lower, smaller and smaller. And so we're really not factoring in any cushion at this point because we feel like it's probably going to even out by the end of the year.
And just because we don't know what that cushion is,
right.
Maybe when we get more towards the end of the year and we're starting to get ready for audit and for school to start, when we know what those numbers are more definite, we can make more plans for that.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot.
Holly?
Yes, thank you. Hey, so Jackie, excellent job. I really wish you were an employee of the district. I just really wish you were. I wish there was some way we could pull you in. I know that we contract for you, but it's something that's been on my mind quite a bit about the management of how we're running the district. And so I want everybody to think really clearly about how we tend to put things together because we are reacting to what's being given to us versus proactively planning how things should be managed. I'm going to start with the paras, the ed assistants, the special ed assistants. If we don't know definitively whether or not every child's minutes on their IEPs are being met, I don't know how we can make cuts. if we're projecting, I don't know if Sonia has given you a for sure number, Karsten. Has she?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. When we talk about the budget reductions, there are two different categories with regard to education support personnel. The first group would be Class 1 education assistants, and so they provide general education support. So that's different than the special education support. The second set of proposed reductions isn't really, 2 weeks ago I said it as well, let's cut back 1 hour and then have people prove to me that that hour needs to be reinstated. After the board meeting 2 weeks ago, I thought, it would be better if we just made adjustments on a person by person basis. And as you said it, Holly, it's truly based on student IEPs, minutes of service required, and other, considerations like that. So we only want to cut if we, or we only want to reduce hours or positions if we know for sure that we're meeting the needs of the kids.
And I see that you've made that adjustment in scenario B. So we are taking into consideration then all of the special ed needs?
Well, it's an estimate right now. And so, Sonia will be continuing her work to analyze that. The one factor that came up is that we've had, this spring, we've had several resignations from the special education, paraprofessional group. And so we're looking to see how that impacts, the whole system in terms of serving kids. So she's in the middle of that work. And I know she's taking it very seriously. It's her top priority right now.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm still not sold on your adding more money to the administration around the mismanagement of how we're doing our office management. And when I say mismanagement, I don't mean people are making mistakes. What I mean is that we have a contracted employee who is managing district employee personnel. It took me a while to figure this out, but once I figured it out and I had some good advice, it's like having, let's say you have the milkwoman or the milkman driving the milk up to the dairy section at the grocery store. It's like having the milkman manage the dairy department. They're not in the same business. They're not employed by the same people. So I have a real issue with that conflict. And this is not against Jackie by any stretch. This is how we're running our office. And I feel like a lot of the issues that we have dealt with in terms of evaluations and supervision should have been tied to an HR department and to maybe more than Amy French working in HR to mitigate some of the stress that Mr. Weiss was put under and to alleviate some of the questions that he had instead of having to come to us. So apart from the glaring inequities about our evaluation system, it's the management of it also. I'm just really concerned that we're putting the cart before the horse in terms of moving our administrative plan forward without taking into account all the pieces that have to go into place that we don't have right now.
Yeah, if I could just respond, just a reminder for everyone that the actual proposed reductions do have reductions in administrative support. So, and I'm not, thrilled about that. Obviously, I agree with you, Holly, that, it's important to have adequate support there so that we can do the best job we possibly can. So it's a really hard one to recommend, cutting a position from the teaching and learning department. And so, again, a reminder, we'd be eliminating the director of support services position, which is currently held by Beth, who's retiring, Beth Forgan. And we'd be eliminating a curriculum coordinator position and replacing those two with one director of teaching and learning. And so that's why there's a cost savings there. And as we talked in my evaluation, it's challenging because, we have these financial realities and yet we have a vision and we know we need the right resources to achieve that vision. So that was a tough one to put down. Another couple of priority twos that are not on the recommended list would be to add a special education administrator, either like an assistant director or maybe 2 coordinators or something like that, at a net cost of $70,000, and or a high school dean of students or student support coordinator. That'd be another $85,000 cost. So both of those were tough for me to move into priority 2 as a recommendation, because I know they're needed within special education in the high school.
$1,000 on futures coming in to kind of give us some clarification on what we needed. To me, it still doesn't make sense to get rid of the curriculum coordinator position. I feel like that should be a stayed position along with the teaching, and we hire some special ed support in there. Look at our district office. I don't know. I mean, you could also manage evaluations, and then principals should be managing their evaluations. So I think there's other ways we can look at this, but I'm extremely concerned with our HR and how this piece for Mr. Weiss and for other things throughout the years have been so missed.
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you came back around to the HR department. Excuse me. Arlen and I went to a workshop session in January through the Minnesota School Board Association. We sat in on a presentation by St. Michael Albertville, which is larger than us, but they have a model set up where it's a director of administrative services. And so they look at it, they put more resources into the HR department. And in the ideal world, we would have somebody like that here who could not only oversee the teacher evaluation process and those kinds of things, but also represent the school district in HR legal matters, so we could reduce our HR costs. So I think that kind of model would probably achieve what several of you are feeling in terms of, the kind of support in HR that we need, as well as, making sure we have someone who, is hired by the school district. And in that model, we would still have Jackie, working in a very similar capacity as a business manager, but, some of those responsibilities are shift. The only problem is that it costs more, than even a full-time business manager. So, but I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I just think we need to really think about how things are plugged in moving forward to make the most sense of our time and management. Thanks, Karsten.
Yeah, and I do not disagree with what really anyone is saying. And I appreciate, board members' willingness to consider, for example, maintaining the curriculum coordinator position or in business management support or building, administrative support. It was really tough when I tried to prioritize these for the recommendations, because I know they're sorely needed, just like our education assistants are needed. They play an important role. So you have the vision, and then you have the financial resources. And this is kind of the shared space.
Yeah, and so it can go either way.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of where the board and you feel, we should be putting our money. But I think it's important to look at all of those pieces. Where are we missing? And let's not continue to ignore.
I'm sorry, I missed the very last part of what you said, Holly.
I said, let's not continue to kind of push it to the back burner, ignore it. We shouldn't have a contracted person managing district employees.
If I think I missed
the last.
Say, Holly, that you don't think the district should have a contracted person as a business manager? Is that kind of the gist of your comments?
Well, yeah, managing district employees.
Okay. Yep. Sorry, just wanted to verify because it was kind of coming in and out.
Yeah, and I think Jim's next.
Jim, I'm just before we get to you though, I just want to remind you all, we're having some major technical difficulties. I've been booted out several times now. And luckily I'm getting back in pretty quickly, but I am on 2 different devices. I'm calling in as well as have a video. So hopefully you won't lose me. The other thing is that the chat box is really meant just for the board members to, it's kind of like raising your hand. That's how we're using the chat box. And I'd really appreciate it if we didn't have any side conversations going on in the chat box, so that we can stay focused here. Thank you. So Jim, you're next.
Yeah, I think most of it's going to be coming down the road here as to what we decide on this whole thing. It's just, I mean, I'm just kind of piggyback. You've heard me loud and clear. It's nothing against Jackie. I think Jackie does a tremendous job on the finances part. We don't, and nobody's, and Carson clearly isn't listening when I mention you do not need to have a business manager. You need a business and finance person. That person is 40 hours a week doing that, helping alleviate. Instead of 1,456 hours a year, we'd get 2,080. So for very similar money. The other thing is, I think cutting the paras is just going to do nothing but down the road, you got to bring them back to the hours that we need them for. The other thing I'm watching, and it's been brought up during this meeting tonight in different aspects of it, is our enrollment's going to go down. Yet we want a priority 1. You want to bring a priority 1 again with about $100,000 to spend. If I'm looking at this correctly, and but I'm just looking at the contract for directors, and you want to go 135 to 160. I hate to use the word assume, but I'm assuming it's with benefits. If that's the case, the current pay for that position is $95,500 to $136,500, and I'm guessing that's just salary. But clarify that for me, please.
Yes, I don't have the actual contract in front of me, but those numbers sound right in terms of the range for a director of teaching and learning. The number that's in the summary, the 152.5, would be salary and benefits, but it's just an estimate. I mean, it would depend a lot on the person's licensure areas, previous experience, what they're currently being paid. And so I had to put a number down, and I didn't want to lowball it because it's on the expense side. So just because it says 152.5 doesn't mean that we'll spend that much on the position.
Right. And okay, let's just use those numbers. I use 135. You had 135 to 160, I think, on there, if I'm correct on that. So 95, we're talking $40,000 of benefits. Wow. Where do I sign up? My goodness. I mean,
yeah,
come
well,
on. We're trying to cut $1 an hour, 1 hour for paras, and we're looking at some contracts out here that's got enormous benefits. Come on. Let's look at the whole thing. If we're actually going to look at seriously cutting some things, let's look at the whole operation instead of just one little meal part of it that we're going to have to bring them back later on because of the needs that they'll provide in the classrooms. So.
Yeah, well, first, Jim, I want to remind you that in the teaching and learning department, there is a recommended reduction of about $100,000, and maybe more depending on how much we, hire the teaching and learning director. So, first and foremost, we are making administrative cuts. Second, the amount that's listed there is not necessarily how much we'll spend. And third, I'll tell you what. A rock solid director of teaching and learning can do incredibly good work, for the school district year round. It's not just during the school year. It's a 12-month employee who has significant responsibilities. So, I think that's, probably on the low end if we compare ourselves with similar districts.
Mike, do you have some comments?
Yeah, a couple of things. That's a good advertisement for being on the negotiations committee. Thanks, Jim. Have fun. But we're not talking about cutting special ed paras, are we? Just general ed in the classroom?
Yeah, if I could respond to that, the actual reduction in positions would be general education paras. I will say that I'm really hoping that some of the general education paras, either the ones who might be cut or even those who will not be cut, would apply for other jobs within the district. For example, we have student monitor positions at the Burnside and middle school. We have some special education transportation positions. They wouldn't have to drive. You know, they would be on the buses either at the beginning of the day and or at the end of the day. So we have hours available for people who may lose, you know, hours or a position. Yeah, in terms of special education, like we do every year, we make adjustments in people's schedules. So, for example, this past year, we had someone hired at, you know, like 6.5 hours a day or 7 hours a day. Well, it turns out that that person's one-on-one student is only going to school now 5 hours a day. And so, you know, logically, you know, we will make reductions in that person's time, you know, because the student's only there, for less time than previously. I will say, I'll point out the one thing, that person will likely be assigned another, you know, to another student who, you know, will have 6.5 hours. So I'm not saying that particular person would be cut.
But you're not cutting the time, you're not cutting contact time between special ed paras and their charges.
Yeah, we have to, you know, as Holly Tower said, we have to, first, it's the right thing to do, and second, it's the legal thing to do. We need to, you know, appropriately provide the minutes, to serve our students. So, you know, that's a non-negotiable. We will do that, and we're proud to do that. But the simple fact is that if we have an extra 15 minutes or 30 minutes in someone's schedule that isn't assigned, then I think we owe it to the school district and the taxpayers is to make those reductions. So, but that we do that every year, you know.
Can we also say, go ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think Jim also made a valid point. There is a good chance that people will be brought back or their hours will be extended because the situation changes. So, I mean, there's definitely a chance of that. It's just a matter of when we make that decision.
Right.
Holly?
Yeah, just to that note quick. So I've supervised
Figure
parents
out
that,
how we're going.
oh, sorry, who's on, me or Mike?
I thought Mike was done. Are you done, Mike?
I just wanted to, let's see if I can think of what I was going to say, but, we're dealing in a budget, and so we're proposing cuts, but they are not necessarily going to happen depending on, or individual cuts, but they're not going to happen necessarily because some people may not be working, so other people may be able to pick up those hours. But we need to budget for the future, and if we have any additional money that we weren't expecting to have, we may be able to hire additional people on or give extra hours, but we can't, we need to set a budget that works for the money that we anticipate getting, not necessarily hoping that we will get more. That's all.
Sorry about that, Mike. You were kind of getting in and out, so I thought you were done. Okay, sorry, Holly.
I can't
Go ahead.
imagine.
No, you're right, Mike. I totally agree with you. I just want to continue to advocate for the immediate need. And that doesn't mean in the fall, because I'm not so sure we'll go back. I don't even know what that looks like. But when I talk about the immediate need at school, if a para rides the bus and they're a special ed para, they'd often, often that person may not get to their appointed classroom on time if they're getting off of the bus. So a general ed para can't ride a special ed bus, it's my understanding, because if they did, they would get the differential from para 1 to para 2. So we have to be real cautious about adding extra hours onto para's day riding the bus, because they could be needed in a classroom with another little group of people. So
and obviously that's a factor, Holly.
I don't want us to get confused with just blanket statements like they can ride the bus. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, we have about 28 different routes that we can hire people for. And when I say 28, there's 14 in the morning and then the same 14 in the afternoon. And so, for example, if someone is a one-on-one paraprofessional for a particular child who rides the bus, then that para could ride the bus with the child. So there wouldn't be any issues as far as, being able to attend class because he or she is assigned to that child. That's just one example.
Right.
There are a lot more complicated ones, but, it is possible for many. I'm sorry, Holly, I interrupted you a second time there.
Oh, I was just saying we don't have a lot of one-to-ones in the district. That's kind of an unheard of thing. So if a para is riding the school bus, a special ed school bus or a regular ed school bus with a child, more than likely they have other kids at school that they have to service. So if they're on the bus and they're not able to be with their other little people, that's a problem. So I'm saying just jumping on a bus and getting more hours isn't necessarily the answer.
Yeah, it won't solve all of our issues, but it would make a significant change for the employees who are interested. And by the way, we've had these positions available now for a couple of years, and there aren't many paraprofessionals who want to explore those options, and I don't blame them. I mean, it would be maybe showing up to work an extra hour and a half. It'd be doing a totally different responsibility. But it is clear that we have those, positions available, and we'll work with anyone to see if we can possibly make it work in their schedule.
It goes back. I'm just gonna move on.
Go
ahead,
it's
Heidi.
the patchwork of our process, Holly. Yeah, it's not the best.
Karsten, could you take a moment and walk through your attachment to the agenda here? I think we understand the administrative reductions that are proposed. Your second, number 2, was June 1st that Community Education and Recreation would be making some, perhaps presenting some recommendations. Could you tell us how that is impacting things? Because I'm under the understanding that that's kind of a separate silo, and I'm not sure where we're backfilling the lost community education funds. And then you discuss, then point 3 is the hiring freeze. So could you describe that a little bit more? I'm just trying to narrow down the information on making a recommendation tonight.
Sure, I'll just briefly go through each one. As you said, Heidi, there are proposed administrative reductions in the teaching and learning department. On June 1st, I believe, Don Wettern will present some proposed furloughs and other potential reductions in community education recreation. So, she's working on that plan and, working with her staff members so they're aware of what's happening.
Right.
We have, several programs that are no longer operating because of COVID-19.
Right.
And so it would make sense to consider furloughs for those people. Now, maybe things will open up, in June or July or August, and that could change the calculus here. There could also be some other potential reductions in terms of hours per day or days per year, but Don will present that information.
So how,
we've
Karsten, let me pause
Yeah.
there. How does that impact the unassigned general fund balance that we have discussing tonight?
Yeah, that the community ed changes will not impact the unassigned general fund balance.
Okay.
But obviously, it would make adjustments in Fund 4, which is community education and recreation. So, but that's still part of the school district, and
Right.
so that would, part of the discussion here.
Okay.
The third item is a hiring freeze. We had one custodian who left a couple of weeks ago, moving or took a different job. I can't remember why, but we did not replace him in that position. If we have more resignations or promotions or retirements,
Sure.
then, my suggestion is not to hire anyone until we know for sure that we'll be back in our school buildings, next year. So, for example, if we have we have distance learning in September and October, then we'd bring back him or her, in November. So that's just a logical thing because the buildings aren't used, as they usually are. Also, part of that hiring freeze would be summer help. In the past, we've hired some in the summer. Obviously, we have enough custodians now who are working to do all the summer work, including preventative, maintenance. So we don't need to hire, the lawnmowers, for the summer. Let's see. The personnel committee is going to discuss the possibility about delaying the hiring of fall coaches. We don't want to set an expectation that we're hiring someone at a certain rate of pay, only to find out that, we won't have, a season or part of the season or something like that. I'm hoping we have full seasons for everyone. That would be the dream, but we're going to at least talk about whether or not we should delay the hiring or maybe pay a stipend until we know for sure the position's available, something like that.
Okay.
Item 5, I've already talked about, we do this every year. We make adjustments and support personnel assignments based on students' needs. Number 6, we've already kind of implemented a hiring freeze for most class 1 support. And I purposely use the word most because there are some positions, like we have a middle school secretary position available now, that we just need to replace. Hopefully there are some internal candidates to take that, and then we may not fill that position, but there are some that we just need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Same with special education positions. Whenever someone resigns or retires, we're going to look at it very carefully to see if we reassign or put positions together or something like that. And then the last 2 are things, that don't negatively impact people. Number 8 is we could consider negotiating an early retirement incentive for support personnel. But I'd like to at least have the board authorize, the negotiations committee and myself to explore that option. We'd have to make sure that it's a win-win-win for everyone, the union, the school district, and of course the employee. And we don't want to force anyone into it, but we thought, well, maybe we could at least explore the option. And then the last one, I think will be very agreeable to the support personnel union as well. Right now we have those first call or emergency subs hired through Teachers on Call. We need subs desperately, but it might be possible to add some floating substitutes to the support personnel contract and perhaps save some money in the process and also enable our current employees to just take on a different position. So, I'd like to at least consider that.
So Karsten, as a follow-up to the 8 and 9, do you believe, talk to me a little bit or to the board about the timeline. Will this still enable us to land on a budget that we need to approve by June 30th this year for next year? Can this be discussed and activated upon, or what does that look like?
Well, the budget, hopefully we can get some or all of this decided one way or the other tonight, because we have some hiring decisions to make, and we want to get on that. In terms of the budget, Jackie, will use assumptions based on a lot of different factors when coming up with a budget to present to the finance committee, and so she'll make assumptions either way, and and then we'll have that approved in June.
All right.
Holly?
Thanks, Pam. So Karsten, I have a question for you about the Director of Teaching and Learning. I noticed in your posting that it only needed a teacher's license, and there were a few other teachers in the district who have reached out to me, and they wanted to know with that, was it an expectation that the teacher would be tenured prior to being able to be a candidate for this position?
I don't know if, well, that's not part of the actual job posting, so I don't think that would be I don't think continuing contract teacher would be a prerequisite. However, clearly, when we're hiring someone for any position, really, we'd want to do a deep enough background check to make sure that we're finding the right person for the job.
So yes or no?
Having someone in a tenured position is not a prerequisite.
However, we just let somebody go because they couldn't achieve tenure?
Yeah, I mean, there can be a wide variety of reasons why somebody doesn't, become a continuing contract person or teacher. And so I don't think, anyone should read into something like that somebody's necessarily effective or ineffective. For example, there are probably schools across the state that are releasing hundreds of teachers right now because they're probationary status and their budget just can't, afford, those particular positions. So I'm sure those discussions are happening all over the place, and there'll be a lot of people who, will be out of a job even though they haven't achieved tenure yet.
We're talking about Red Wing. And it seems awfully messy, and it seems like an awfully messy approach. I've been questioned about this by people, and I said I would find out.
Which part is messy?
Relieving somebody of their teaching duties because they couldn't achieve tenure, yet not making that a prerequisite for a director's position.
Yeah, I personally think those are unrelated issues.
Wow.
Okay. What else?
Other comments on, this is a lot to digest, and I know we've been going at this almost 4 hours.
Yeah. I have a question to Holly's comment. Is if we hire somebody who's not necessarily a probationary teacher, isn't the first year hire the first year that they're hired automatically a probationary, or do we hire somebody on who has already achieved tenure? Do they automatically get it here in Red Wing?
Are you talking about the Director of Teaching and Learning position?
Let's just say any position.
Well, I'll answer it in two different ways, then. First, if someone has at least 3 years of continuous teaching in a Minnesota school district, in another Minnesota public school district, and then they come to Red Wing, let's say, then they get 1 year of probation or probationary status. They just get 1 year because they've already put in 3 to somewhere else. They come here for 1 year, and then as soon as they're offered the second contract, they're taken.
Right.
So that's kind of the rule for that. There's some variations of that, but that's the general rule. For every other position, it doesn't matter, how many years they worked as a teacher somewhere else, because it's not relevant. It's only if you're acting as a teacher here. So the director of teaching and learning position, would require a teaching license, but they do not become tenured as a teacher here. They would be an at-will employee.
All right. Thanks for the clarification.
Actually, in most places, if we want to compare to the state or around the state, even though I said most of them require a director's license, not a teaching license.
Director of what?
Director of curriculum instruction, director of teaching, some type of a director license.
Yeah, certainly for positions like this, there are some schools that would require a principal's license or, some sort of administrative license. I'm not aware of a director of teaching license, or some of the examples you just gave. But many schools would require a principal's license or a superintendent's license or, something like that. Yep, there's no doubt about that.
We would be looking for somebody who would be able to evaluate teachers. Is that correct?
Yeah, if that's part of the job responsibilities, then we would need to make sure that we have someone with a principal's license.
And it would be advantageous to have somebody who can do that, correct?
It would be advantageous. It's not a prerequisite, but it would definitely be a plus. Yeah, and that's one thing that, Beth Borgen wasn't in the Director of Support Services role, in the Director of Teaching and Learning role. She was the Director of Support Services. But because she had a principal's license, she was able to be assigned to be the principal at Tower View, and so she could conduct teacher evaluations there and elsewhere through the district. So it was definitely an advantage that she had a principal's license.
Madam Chair, in the spirit of moving this along a little bit, I don't want to take away questions from people, but I would like to go ahead and actually make a motion. I'm purely making this based on budgetary
and
right now, but I'm going to go ahead and make the motion for actually all 4 of those recommendations that are presented in our board packet. And I don't know if you need them separately or what you're looking for, but I just think that we need to do this for our budget. And I think we've had a long discussion, and I've looked at this for many months. And again, to move us along, I'm going to make that motion.
So Jamie's made the motion for all 4 of those points. Let's just do one at a time. Number 1 is I move to approve priority 1 proposals in the human resources plan, including the elimination of the curriculum coordinator and director of support services positions. Janie made that motion. Do I have a second?
Heidi Jones, second.
Any discussion on that one motion?
It doesn't necessitate a specific alternate hire, correct?
Correct. It just says that we're going to eliminate the curriculum coordinator. It moves all priority 1 proposals, including the elimination of the curriculum coordinator and director of support services.
Right.
Okay.
Moved by Janie, seconded by Heidi. Arlen, I see that you've got your name up on the chat.
Mute, Arlen.
Arlen? Arlen, you're on mute. Okay, we'll come back to Arlen. Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, is this the same motion was this one of the same motions that was presented at the last meeting?
Mhm.
I don't recall actually having a motion about this particular topic because we're
Sounds,
talking about budget reductions first, and then I thought we waited on the human resources plan.
well, it sounds very familiar, and since it failed last time, the only way you can bring back a motion like this that's very similar or the same is a vote. You have to do a reconsider motion. And that's what this looks like. They all look like it's very similar. All the same type motions that were presented and defeated 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think Lisa would have to look, or Lisa or Heidi would need to look through the notes.
I am looking.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, while they're looking, Arlen?
Yeah, I'm looking for clarification. Does this include anything on reductions in paraprofessionals? I think it does from what I'm reading because it says priority one.
The first item, the priority one proposals, has nothing to do with education assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's different than last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm looking also, and I'd agree that it's different. They were all separated by budget reductions and HR plan last time, and the motion was to eliminate the following in the last one and had different bullet points.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that I think it is a mistake to eliminate the curriculum coordinator's position. I don't understand the rationale. I understand the budget, don't get me wrong. I don't understand the rationale. So for that reason, I won't be supporting this first motion. I just think it's a colossal mistake to eliminate that position.
Kirsten,
Are we
can
ready
you
for a vote?
shed some light on position? Is there those duties of the curriculum coordinator would be assumed by whom?
Oh, yeah, the duties of the curriculum coordinator would be assumed by the director of teaching and learning.
So in essence, we're not necessarily eliminating a position, but we're combining positions.
Correct. Yep, we're taking two positions and combining it into one. And so, that would be the administrative reduction that we've been talking about.
Yes, I understand that. I'm still going back to what happened last week in terms of management and evaluations, and having a contracted employee manage employees from Red Wing Public Schools it's a big concern. So I'm just going back to that. I'm stating I think it's a big mistake. I get it. I just don't agree.
Yeah, and by the way, just for a point of clarification, Holly, this person would not be a contracted person. This would be a Red Wing hired individual. Or were you talking about the business management?
I'm talking about Jackie managing employees from Red Wing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, this one, the priority one proposal was silent on any changes in the business department. So theoretically, what could happen, I know the motion's already been made, but there could be proposed amendments to add business management or to keep the curriculum coordinator position or, to do something like that. I mean, certainly there are amendments that could be made to it. This is just that subset of proposals that we've been talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, we have huge evaluation issues and HR issues. So Jackie's contracted with us for 28 hours a week. And to me, it feels like it's a 40-hour-a-week job to manage office employees and help the HR process.
We have a motion.
Would you like to make an amendment? So we do have to have the vote on the motion first and then the amendment. So the motion on the table right now is to approve priority 1 proposals in the human resources plan, including the curriculum coordinator and the director of support services. Made by Janie, seconded by Heidi. Last call for discussion on that. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Nay.
Ms. Fair,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
No.
and chair votes aye. All right, the second motion then that Janie moved on, that I need a second on, is I move hours a day of class 1 support personnel and or elementary media and technology paraprofessionals.
Mike will second.
I'll second Heidi Jones.
Oh, Mike beat you to it, Heidi.
Oh, I didn't hear.
So motion made by Janie, seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? This is Arlen, the paraprofessional class 1.
Yep.
And again, I guess discussion's sake, it's always extremely hard to, reduce time. And I am confident that we're going to find areas for people to add on hours if they would like. I just think, again, I'm basing my decisions on budgetary things and the unknowns of what the current we're in is going to do. And I just think smaller reductions at this time is going to be the best for students in our district as a whole in the long run. So I just want to publicly state that because I know this affects people and hard decisions have to be made.
And I'll echo
Thank you,
those
Janie.
sentiments, Janie. This isn't easy work, and I just think we're facing some really grim financial outlooks, and I'm pleased that we were able to kind of reduce the 60-hour proposal to 40, and I'm hoping there's some flexibility there too. There's different positions to hop into, and I'm hoping that negotiating some of this stuff will shift some things in everybody's favor as far as personal planning for these folks and the district's ability to carry forward with a stable budget.
Agreed. Any further discussion?
Agreed.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Who was?
Go ahead, Holly.
Okay. I was just curious. Do we know by number how many people that would take off of their benefits?
That's a good question. 40 hours per day. Let's say the average person works 6 hours a day, so we're looking at 6 or 6.5 individuals. So obviously, if we cut entire positions, they would lose their health insurance. We're going to look at that closely. The goal is not to take away people's health insurance, but I can't promise that everyone will maintain that benefit. So to make a long answer short, I don't know for sure, but there could be about 6 people or so who could lose their positions if set positions.
How many people?
It'd be, roughly 6 individuals.
Yeah.
It depends on how the cuts are made.
The majority of our ed support in class 1 are 5 hours and 45 minutes a day and wouldn't qualify for health insurance to start with.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there are some who would qualify, and so they would be at risk of losing their health insurance. But like Jackie said, a lot of the general ed paras, work just under that 6-hour threshold, and so they work in general ed classrooms or Title I programs.
Thank you. Anybody else? Did I hear somebody else? Okay, so hearing no further discussion on that, the motion on the table is to the day of Class 1 support personnel and or elementary media and technology paraprofessionals. We'll start with a roll call. Heidi Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
No.
And Mr. Derricks.
Abstain.
Yeah. And chair votes aye. Motion number 3, moved by Jamie.
Pardon
Still
me,
needs a
Pam.
second.
Pardon me, Pam. I just want to make sure I recorded that vote correctly. Do I have 5 people that said aye, 1 nay, and 1 abstention?
Correct.
Okay, it was just a little garbled. I want to be sure I had that clear. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. The next motion is I move to authorize the superintendent and non-certified negotiations committee to negotiate early retirement incentives for support personnel pending final approval by the school board. Motion made by Janie. I'm looking for a second.
Second, Heidi Jones.
Any further discussion on this motion?
You know, I guess I would just add that, again, when we made millions of dollars of cuts back in 2012 or 2013, whatever that was, we did, you know, early retirement incentives for teachers too. So I think this makes sense, and wherever we can find ways to help people and help our staff and help the, so.
Be creative.
Yeah. Agreed. This time, I will start with
Who?
the motion on the table, Holly, to authorize the superintendent and the negotiations committee to negotiate early retirement incentives.
Okay.
Who's up?
It's you.
Oh, I didn't hear me. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Abstain.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. And finally, the fourth motion made by Janie is to authorize the superintendent and the non-certified negotiation committee to meet and confer personnel association about adding floating substitutes within a master agreement pending final approval by the school board. Made by Janie, looking for a second. Who's that?
It's Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Made by Janie, seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? All right, we'll start with Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Derrick.
Abstain.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Howard.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. All right, that was a lot to get through. Thank you for hanging in there, and thank you for your good work, Kirsten.
Thanks for
These are
reading the
never
motion,
easy. No problem. Okay. To go through, it's an emotional night. These are not easy decisions to have. I thank you for hanging in there, and thank you. All right, coaches. Oh, it's after 10. Oh.
Yeah, Paul Hartman is hopefully still here. I know he has a lot of graduation stuff going on, but he will give the presentation about our ideas on how to pay spring coaches.
Good evening, everybody. My evening sort of began with 20 plus more graduates at Red Wing High School this evening. Ms. Tower, it was good to see you there. It was good to see other members of the board last week as well. So it was another great night